Oh oh. The people who had reacted came back to their senses, and rushed to catch the big-nosed mad pig. Each displayed their own unique skills. Snake Envoy Babu blew his flute, called out a poisonous snake, silently bit the big-nosed wild pig, and immediately turned it over. The martial artist cleared his shoulder and threw the big-nosed mad pig to the ground, and passed out. Hanzo is worthy of the name of a ninja. He played the ninjutsu of turning a stone, and easily played with a big-nosed wild pig, causing it to hit the stone, and his head was broken. When everyone is killing pigs and killing pigs. Gon noticed that Roy watched quietly without moving, and asked curiously, "Uncle, don't you want to catch 037? Roy took off the wine gourd, took a sip of the clear mountain spring, and smiled. "Go do your work, be careful not to be picked up by pigs." "Oh. Okay." The hedgehog-headed boy leapt into the forest with a fishing rod on his shoulders, aimed at a big-nosed wild pig, and hit its head with 10 fishhooks. Shouted loudly to the scumbag fleeing in a panic. Leorio, attack the head is its weak point. Thanks to Gon, Leorio used a vine to trip over a boar, knocked a briefcase on its head, and successfully completed the kill. "Oh ho ho ho, you little brat is not sensible. Let me do things like killing pigs for you, Mr. Tianwei." Hisoka flew out a card and killed 2 boars, keeping one for himself and dedicating one to Roy. It's a pity. Roy didn't appreciate it. He glanced at him and said, "I know you very well, or are you self-righteous?" Hisoka. Heart-piercing, even more excited. This feeling is even more exciting than the fantasy of being whipped by Mr. Tianwei. Ah, as expected of Mr. Tianwei, I really wish I could chew on you right now, oh ho ho ho. Hisoka lowered his head, put his chin on his chest, and the corners of his mouth were hooked into a deep versus shape, trying to control himself, and took another look. Roy walked straight past him, gently beckoning to a big-nosed wild pig that was about to escape. "Come here." The big-nosed wild pig trembled visibly, weirdly. It actually turned its head and walked towards Roy. Its eyes are full of fear, but its body is contrary to its brain. It doesn't obey orders at all. It's unspeakably weird. It's as if it's a full-fledged porcupine that roasted itself. What the hell? Could it be that this guy's nen has something to do with beast control? Menchi frowned, looking at the big-nosed wild pig who only obeyed Roy's orders, and those who didn't know thought they were looking at a dog. And to be able to do this kind of thing, in Menchi's cognition, only the Eudemon's hunter, who was born with 100 beasts, can do it. Buhara nodded in agreement. Perhaps, this is really the only explanation. Big-nosed and mad pig is one of the most vicious. Even ordinary phantom beast hunters are difficult to control. However, this guy can. Can you just say that he is the young master who came out of the Zoldyck's house that raised the dragon? In order to catch these boar-nosed wild pigs, Buhara also specially found a phantom beast hunter friend and did some tricks. Now it seems that in the eyes of the second young master of the Zoldyck family, these hands and feet are just toys. However, no, he's not the Eudemon's hunter. Saucy clearly saw from hiding in the tree. This big-nosed wild pig was obviously captured by Roy's aura, just like the one who pretended to be him and a group of candidates before. Ape-like. The difference is that one fainted, and the other was deliberately targeted, so that fear dominated the body, so they did such unbelievable behaviors. Ah! The big-nosed wild pig howled, tears streaming down his face. Step by step, under the direction of Roy's eyes, he walked to the side of the bonfire set up by many candidates and became the only one. A porcupine who puts himself on the grill. It screamed horribly, and still had a clear consciousness. Compared with the compatriots who died around it, there was an envious look in its eyes. This weird and intrusive picture is reflected in the field of vision of Hanzo, Babu, Burns, Ching, Greta and others, making these people's scalps tingle. At the same time, a thought flashed in my mind. One day they won't be thrown into the fire to be roasted by Mr. Tianwei like this pig, right? Tisk, no. Definitely not. As long as I don't mess with him, wouldn't it be fine? Several people subconsciously looked at Roy. Roy seemed to be aware of it, and glanced at him lightly. They felt a chill on the back of their necks, and hurriedly lowered their heads. Crack, crack, the bonfire jumped, splashing a few sparks. The smell of meat is accompanied by the sound of sila, dripping on the ground, permeating. Not to mention how fragrant it is. Gon and Leorio got together and licked their mouths. After going through all kinds of hardships, they finally got here. They didn't bother to eat a mouthful of hot food. Now their stomachs are growling, and their eyes are fixed on the whole roasted pig. But it made them hungry. It's a pity. Be patient, you can't eat. Kurapika glared at the two of them and reminded them. Buhara is talking about roasted whole pigs, missing a piece of skin is not complete. In order to pass the test, Gon and Leorio had no choice but to close their eyes, and obeyed Kurapika's words. Already. As a matter of fact, all the examinees who caught the wild boar did the same thing. To suppress their hunger, they had to roast the pig and then pay tribute to Bukhara. It's a pity. People are hungry, they just want to eat. Sensing that the pig was almost roasted, a stick knife came into everyone's eyes. With a light pick, a whole roasted pig was skewered away. Everyone was stunned, turning their necks stiffly, following the power to look. Roy blew on the roasted whole pig, that had just been roasted, pointed at the fattest pig, and took a bite. Everyone. I haven't recovered yet. Then an angry growl was heard. Do you dare to eat my pig? A big hand grabbed Roy's shoulder with its head in its head. It is said to be a meat mountain, but Buhara doesn't have that greasy feeling at all. Instead it is strong and strong, with a sense of strength. The protruding big hand and the whistling wind brought it up are the proof. Pig. That's my pig, mine. Damn it. How dare you bastard. As a gourmet hunter, the biggest difference between Buhara and Menchi is what Buhara pursues is satiety, while Menchi pursues the taste. Now seeing someone dares to defy the world's disgrace, and eat the big meal he specially prepared for this exam, and he immediately loses it sensible. Angry. Just listen to the muffled sound of pop. Buhara slapped Roy's shoulder heavily, and pulled him back, trying to pull him away. However, what people didn't expect was, with his back to the giant, Roy remained motionless. Even though Buhara tried his best, he couldn't shake him a bit. What he didn't know was, Roy had actually used the panel to fully understand the attributes of Menchi and Buhara when he first met them. I have to say that Shah Hala is not as tall as Bai. With 199 points of strength, he has reached the limit of mortals. This is also the reason why Gon, Kurapika, and Leorio in the original book wonder why the other party has not changed their body shape after eating 74 whole roasted pigs. The key point is, he has already reached full strength in the attribute, and he cannot be treated as an ordinary person at all. It's a pity. Just one step away is a natural moat. For Roy, who just broke the limit of strength, all under the ghosts and gods are ants. Your pig? Roy swallowed the pig into his stomach with one gulp, shaking his shoulders. The huge force hit like an overwhelming force. Before Buhara could react, he was already in midair and was sent flying out by Roy's shoulder, and broke a big tree with 10 bangs. Bukhara. The leaves mixed with the soil were flying, and Menchi's expression changed. Buhara coughed dryly. I'm fine. He patted the dirt on his body and staggered to his feet. Damn it. This guy can do it. He can still get up after being hit by Mr. Tianwei, so he's worse than me. Bah. Smelly shameless. You don't even piss to see what kind of virtue you are, and you let this bragging. But this guy is worthy of being an examiner. He is not as big as Bai Chong, but he just resists the grip. Hey, is this the point? Shouldn't it be Teacher Tiano? He ate the examiner's pig and even beat the examiner. How can he pass this test? Worry. According to what you said, Dao Sensei, I'm so impulsive. From the initial stun, to the shock, to the reaction. Some Roy fans, including Gon, Leorio, and Bokuer, stared blankly at Roy, their eyes full of worry. People like Hanzo, Babu, Burns, Qingli, and Greta had strange expressions on their faces, and there was even a hint of schadenfreude at the corners of their mouths. At the end of the hunter test, the number of people will become smaller and smaller, and the competition will become bigger and bigger. Except for friends and fans who care about Roy, of course no one wants to compete with a monster, like Roy. It's good now. I can only say that he eats well and fights well, giving all the people who feel the pressure a chance to see hope. Best. To eliminate him completely. Hey, young people are ignorant. This is the consequence of recklessness. Tonka quietly cats in the crowd, with a hint of joy in the corner of his mouth, as if seeing Roy eliminated is more happy than he passed the hunter test. Beside a big tree between the two of them, Kahlua witnessed all this and silently breathed a sigh of relief. Along the way, he kept silent and remained unknown, trying his best to eliminate his sense of existence, so as not to be pulled over by the bastard second brother as a horse again. But he hadn't been walked for clinker yet. Crisis. This is simply nectar from heaven. The white-haired and smelly brother moved his lips, and was about to blow a whistle to celebrate this joyful moment. Suddenly he shivered, as if someone had glanced at him. He looked around quietly, but found nothing, and immediately lost the interest in whistling. Hey, My stupid Odudu, you seem to have forgotten that you are still in debt. The domineering aura of knowledge and knowledge radiated out, taking a panoramic view of everyone's reactions. Roy's pair of blind eyes moved, his gaze was taken away from Kahlua, and finally he looked at the hanging over the door of the abandoned warehouse as if unintentionally. Block clock. A faint electric arc flickered in the very center of the clock, searing his gaze into the pupils of Maha and Netero. Ho 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 ho, after such a big disaster, you can still eat roast pigs indifferently, old man, your grandson is shameless, let's fight with what you have. Buhara, as the examiner, represents the Hunter Association. If Roy dares to attack him, he is slapping the Hunter Association in the face. Netero has a big heart and a fat body, no matter how generous he is somewhat unhappy. Boy, don't go online here. Maha rubbed his stomach. He had just practiced with Netero, and now he was watching Roy chomping on the roast pig, comparing it to the instant noodles he had just eaten. The little old man, I can't help but feel hungry again. I secretly scolded Netero. He sneered and said, I am an old man, although I am old, I am not blind or hungry. Which year hasn't the examiner of your hunter test been attacked, among other things, just the kid playing poker? I heard that he was the one who almost killed the examiner last year, why didn't you fart? Old man, didn't you say you didn't pay attention to the hunter test? Netero snorted coldly and said, indeed, this happened. But. Netero changed his voice, looked at Maha with a gloomy gaze, and said, all candidates who attack the examiners will be eliminated. This Hisoka you mentioned is no exception. Yo, threatening me? After living for hundreds of years, this is the first time Maha has seen such a fresh thing. Boy, you can try it. A vague killing intent seemed to pervade Maha, who rubbed his hands on his stomach, squinted his eyes at Netero and said, if you give me, I will give you back. Don't dig your eyes and sell them. Don't say that Roy is passively counter-attacking. Even if he really made a move, what can you do? Crackling. There seemed to be a thunderbolt exploding in the office. Even though it was dog days, Domian Man suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar, curled up in a corner and shivered. This time it seems to be different from the previous, so-called practice. The Domian Man secretly looked at Netero. Netero's face has never been so serious as it is at this moment. He looked at Maha in silence for a while, and then smiled. Although I really don't want to admit it, it was indeed Buhara who made the first move. This time, you won, old man. Netero was defeated and took the initiative to throw a step to Maha. Maha hummed noncommittally, turned his head to look at Roy in the picture, and said to him meaningfully, Netero, this is the only grandson I have. Remember this for me. The murderous aura that filled the office suddenly dissipated following Maha's words. Netero's heart trembled, and he had tried his best to raise Roy's status in Maha's heart. But I never thought, even so, I still underestimated it in the end. It is true that if Netero also has a grandson who breaks the limit twice before the age of 18, he may do more than Maha excessively. Some might say, it's not fair, but fairness itself is a joke in the world of Hunter x Hunter. Grandpa, you have a good grandson, I'm very jealous. Why don't you just pass it on to me? Netero stroked his beard, and suddenly said, the more he thought about it, seeing that Roy is not very popular in your family. Accepted to me, the old man will pass on the complete inheritance of the source of the heart and pass it on to him without reservation. Heart flow. Shit flow. If you want a grandson, I will give you a doctor than that kid Yongda. Maha gave Netero a look. Roy, understand? Hey, Tui, since you have that kind of heart, why don't you just give the hunter license to my grandson? It saves him from not doing his job all day long, and he doesn't even have comics. Netero. Silent. Co-author. You put this up to scare me, just to make your grandson go back to drawing manga quickly? Ahem, that's not acceptable. Netero was completely speechless to Maha, and said with a straight face, there has never been a precedent for granting someone else a hunter license out of thin air. Even if it's me, I can't bypass the review committee and set this precedent. So, let this kid take the test honestly. It's his ability to pass the exam. If you fail the exam, don't blame others. I'm afraid some people don't want my grandson to live? Maha glanced at Buhara in the picture. Netero pouted, I should be the one who should be worried. Your grandson broke the limit twice, what if my subordinates shoot him to death? No, I believe Buhara will handle it. Netero quietly winked at the Domian Man, and the Domian Man understood, turned his back and took out his mobile phone to call Sa-Si. After Sachi received the call, he looked at the messy scene with a headache. Secretly made a gesture to Bukhara, and I don't know if this guy saw it, so I saw. Buhara regained his senses a little, strode up behind Roy, controlled his temper, looked at Roy in a deep voice and said, I hope you can give me an explanation. Am I your father? I also need to explain to you that Roy turned his back to Bharat. Without even looking at him, he pointed to the big-nosed mad pig whose face had been gnawed off and said, You said the pig is yours. How about you call it and see if it answers? Mad, you have eaten half of the pig's face. If it agrees, it will be hell. All the candidates said to Bharat, silent, speechless. At this time, the familiar perverted laughter sounded. Shua Shua, playing with the poker cards in his hand, Hisoka raised a hand and said, I testify that the pig belongs to teacher Tiano. It was put on the grill voluntarily, and it was given to Mr. Tianwei to eat. So, love will disappear, right? Why don't you defend him like this? Let's just divorce. Yurmi quietly looked at the field, feeling more and more that something was wrong with her good friend, as if Dot was spoiled by her blind brother, and gradually lost herself. It's just. Do I need you to testify? Roy took a sip of clear and sweet mountain spring water, swallowed the last bite of porkhead, and gave Hisoka a look. Hisoka. The corners of his eyes twitched, revealing an expression of enjoyment. Seeing this, ill fans really got screwed. Those dead fish eyes turned to Roy. The blind man walked up to Buhara and looked up at the mountain of meat, which was much bigger than him. He was very dissatisfied with his condescending attitude of looking down on people. Looking at him at the same height as the other party, he looked at him and said, It's only natural to pay for meals. The pig I roast is of course up to me. If you want to eat, just pay. I'm sorry, I sincerely benefit 20 million nuns. Bring it. Saying that, Roy stretched out his right side. Bharat and Menchi. I looked at each other and never thought of this. His eyes inadvertently passed over those examinees, but he was surprised to find that no matter whether it was the prickly kid, the bald ninja, or Sachi who was hiding on the tree trunk, they all seemed to be surprised. It's strange that, is it really like this again? The expression. Seriously, I have seen a ghost. My pig, that's my pig. You ate my pig and asked me to pay you. How did I find out that your face is bigger than mine? Buhara gritted his molars in the back and gritted crack, crack, and wiped his fist secretly. Out of the corner of his eye, he glanced at Saucy again. The other party crossed his hands and made a no. Finally he let out a muffled grunt, turned around, twisted his fat buttocks, and went back to the warehouse sullenly. You've passed. If you want money, it's okay if I don't want to eat it. Shah Hala left this sentence coldly. And that's it. As expected of Mr. Dao. The man who can deflate the examiners, my idol. Since he can eat and pass the test, does it mean that I can too? There was a commotion in the crowd. I can't help it, the roasted worry-nosed mad pig is too delicious. With the precedent of Roy in front of them, many people stared straight at the fragrant pig, their index fingers moved, and they were eager to try. However, you guys can try it. Halfway through the journey, Buhara suddenly turned around and gave the crowd a fierce look. Whoever dares to touch my 230 pigs again, I will sentence him out immediately. The commotion stopped immediately. All the examinees realized that the other party was an examiner who could decide their life and death at will. But how can you double standard? Shut him out. Tonpa was furious. I didn't expect that Buhara would back down and give up, such an examiner. Tonpa. Hey, examiner, pig. Holding the freshly roasted wild boar, Tonpa rushed to Bharat one step ahead, licking his face and paying tribute. Cut. A white-haired and stinky brother didn't see it as a good show, kicked a stone away, and followed Tonpa to pay tribute. Hanzo, Babu the snake, Burns the beekeeper, Ching the martial artist, Greta the lion hunter, and others shook their heads when they saw this, and secretly said it was a pity. It's a pity that I didn't see Roy out. Helpless, he had no choice but to sneak out from under Roy's eyelids with a low eyebrow, and followed the crowd to pay tribute. Uncle, I went too. Gon and Lay Ali looked enviously at Roy eating the whole roasted pig, licked his mouth, and walked towards the warehouse step by step. Unexpectedly, the 3 pork ribs caught up, him, Leorio and Kurapika, turned into a beautiful arc, and fell into the eyes of the 3. I almost forgot to feed the dog. What are you doing in a daze? Do you still need me to feed you personally? Roy bit a pig leg, said with a blank face. Gon yelled, wow, opened his mouth and waved excitedly at Roy. Uncle, arigato. Take me. Leorio imitated Gon and waved at Roy, causing Kurapika to roll his eyes. Learn from others. Call Gon an idiot every day, and don't be ashamed. Kurapika held up the whole roasted pig in one hand, freed the other hand, scooped it lightly, grabbed the pork ribs in his hand, turned and bowed to Roy. Gong looked up and saw that Roy waved his hands without raising his head, smiled to himself, and followed Gon and Leary towards Hala. Tisk tisk. What a touching friendship. A pervert took a piece of Roy's pork and stuffed it into his mouth. Tisk tisk sighed. I bumped into Roy's spinning blind eyes head on. Ho ho smiled, and threw a bank card to Roy. Password. XXXXXX, keep the change, please. Hisoka winked quietly at Roy, and kicked Ilmi's ass. Damn it, didn't you know it was in the way? In front of me, the main palace, winking and making eye contact. Who are you going to show me? Yermi's dead fish eyes rolled upwards, and after accidentally kicking Hisoka, she pretended to be innocent and went straight to Buhara. Surrounded in front of the warehouse, Buhara spread his legs and sat on the ground, turned his grief and anger into appetite, and killed 73 pigs one by one in the blink of an eye. Worry. This guy is so edible, no wonder you're so strong? Strange. How did his stomach hold so many pigs? Everyone whispered timidly, secretly thinking that Buhara is a monster. But then I thought, it was just such a monster, who was knocked into the air by Mr. Tianwei lightly. He couldn't help but secretly looked at Roy, and couldn't help being speechless. Hi. Oh, I'm finally full, as the last pig skeleton was thrown out. Buhara patted his big belly, and belched contentedly. His gloomy mood improved, and he announced loudly, I declare that you are all qualified. Menchi slapped her forehead. The old lady knew this would happen. She raised her head and gave Buhara a look. You bastard, you don't pick anything. Can you still be considered an examiner? What's wrong? Buhara simply closed his eyes, pretending to be stupid, and said in a daze, anyway, I have already eliminated a lot of people. Besides. The fat man's narrowed eyes opened a slit, and he secretly looked at Roy and muttered, I don't want to entangle with this guy anymore. If you want, you throw away. Menchi's face turned black. It's bad, right? What about your awareness as a gourmet hunter? You've eaten it all, right? Menchi snorted sullenly. The so-called food hunter should be obsessed with his own taste that is different from ordinary people. I'll do what you don't dare to do. I, Menchi, will never give in to anyone. Directly ignoring the small gestures that Sachi frequently signaled to come over, Menchi took a deep look at Roy. The blind man satisfactorily finished enjoying the roast pig, took a big mouthful of clear and sweet mountain spring water with the wine gourd, and touched Roy comfortably. Abdomen. Seeing Menchi looking over, she grinned and smiled. Menchi. Lifting his chin, he snorted coldly, picked up the drumstick, raised it at Roy, and hit the drumstick on the gong. The roasted whole pig cuisine test of the big nose wild pig, 74 people passed. Alright. Followed by Menchi announcing the result of the first test. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Sa-si, who was squatting on a tree trunk, saw everything in his eyes and murmured, 74 people is indeed a very good number. There were not so many in previous years. Of course, apart from the excellent overall quality of this year's candidates, Sa once glanced at the blind man who drank by himself, and sighed secretly. It has something to do with this master. At least, without Roy's help, whether it's his endurance test, or ape riot, a lot more people will be eliminated. However, the next step is the real test. Sa tried to hint at Menchi to no avail, and sighed helplessly. The girl has a stubborn personality and is too principled, so she just ignored him. Question. I can only pray that the questions she asks are not too difficult. However, Sa-si also knows that this is unrealistic. After all, she is not an ordinary food hunter. The fact that the other party was rated as 1 star at such a young age is not only because she is a rare master chef in this world, but also has something to do with her perverted pursuit of food. It is obviously not an easy task to satisfy such a person. X. Okay, you are lucky to have passed the next Harana pass. I'm not as talkative as he is. After the big-nosed wild pig cooking was over, it was her turn, Menchi. With her hands on her hips, Menchi let out a cold snort. Her eyes swept across the candidates, focusing on Roy for a moment. The crowd fell silent in an instant, feeling a rush of pressure. Oh, I knew it would be like this. Sa-si touched the phone in his pocket, and looked at Menchi with a headache. It's getting stronger and stronger. Especially when Menchi glanced at Roy provocatively, I feel even more anxious. Maybe, I really want the president to come forward. Sa-si was very worried. Menchi pretended not to see him, snorted, and told her exam questions. The menu I want is nigiri sushi. This is a well-known dish. Anyone with a little knowledge has eaten it. Even if they haven't eaten it, they have heard of it, but it was placed on the earth in the previous life. Not the current Hunter x Hunter world. Roy heard the name of this familiar dish, and calmly swept around. As expected, except for the bald ninja who was born in a small island country. All the candidates including Gon, Kurapika, Leorio, Hisoka, and Kahlua were stupefied. They didn't know what the so-called sushi was. What? So here comes the problem. It seems that you can make a wave of bad information and make another wave of money. The power ATM machine is ready to swallow gold at any time. Roy smiled thoughtfully, and there was a flash of glory in the pair of blind eyes that were spinning around. HMPH, I just like to see the confused faces of you guys. Menchi put her hands on her hips and smiled contentedly, secretly feeling grateful for the ethnic cuisine of a small island country she prepared. In fact, the effect is very good, everyone she doesn't know, so she can rest assured. Suppressing the pride in her heart, she then cleared her throat, come with me. With a wave of hands, a group of examinees followed Menchi to a large kitchen with a chopping board, knives and forks in a dazed manner. Seeing this kind of scene, the examinees who have never been in the kitchen to cook a few times are dumbfounded. They all swallowed a mouthful of saliva, listening to Menchi's popularization of sushi knowledge, like a group of people who have been caught by the door of the plasticine that she held in her hand and kneaded casually. Okay, here is where you make sushi. Tools and materials are ready for you. I also steamed the rice for making sushi for you. With a sneer on the corner of Menchi's mouth, she shook her finger and said, then, everyone. Please start your performance. After finishing speaking, Menchi lay down on the sofa, closed her eyes, and hummed the most popular ditty at the moment. It actually left all the candidates in place, messy. Mad. Can anyone tell me how to make this sushi? Starting with a knife, cooking all depends on ignorance. How the hell do I know? Hey, is there any friend who knows? Tell me about science. Hey, Tui, idiot. Even if someone knows, they won't tell you. People are not stupid. Can't they just watch you get eliminated? A group of candidates returned to their stations, looked down at the tools and materials placed in front of them, and felt numb. Except for a certain baldy ninja. Hey, great. I'm sure to win this round of exams. Hanzo looked around, and found that everyone was frowning, covering their mouths and almost snickering. What is different from everyone is. He was born in the small island country mentioned by Menchi. It's just that he didn't expect that the traditional food in his hometown would become an exam question one day. Doesn't this mean to give points to Uncle Hanzo? The bald man smiled. He is ready to pass this round of exams alone. I took a sneak peek at Roy, thinking that the other party will be eliminated here, and I will never have to meet him again, so I am very happy. However, he didn't know that there was a law called Murphy in this world. The more you want something, the less you can get it. The more you don't want others to know, the easier it is to be exposed. As soon as the knowledge came out, he easily caught the smiling Hanzo in his eyes. Roy glanced at Hanzo with a half smile, and happened to be spotted by Gon beside him. Uncle, do you know how to make sushi? The little boy is small, but his volume is not small. As soon as the words fell, the examinees including Leorio, Kurapika, and Hisoka looked. The blind man hit the ground lightly with the stick and knife in his hand, cleared his throat, and smiled. Certainly. Isn't nigiri sushi something you can do with your hands? Damn. Uncle, Dao-sensei, damn Roy Zoldyck, does he really know? With one word, the world is shocked. All living beings appear, each with its own differences. Uncle, you really know it. Gon jumped up happily, his excited look represented all the candidates present except the bald ninja. It's impossible. Hanzo and Menchi who came up with the question were stunned. One thing is certain. Nigiri sushi is indeed an extremely unorthodox dish. Because its origin is a small island country, compared to the human world, it is only the size of a fingernail. Ordinary people have never even heard of it. How could it be possible to put energy into paying attention to this not-so-famous dish? That is, Hanzo, who was born in a small island country, and Menchi, who has traveled all over the mainland in search of delicious food these years. How can it be repair? This guy Tianwei can't really know it, can he? The bald man was stunned. The smile stopped abruptly, and it switched to the state of lying in 10 seconds. He stared at Roy in a daze, his complexion uncertain, like Menchi, biting his fingernails, staring at Roy, with fire in his eyes. I don't believe it, you really know how. I'd like to see what you can come up with. It's over. Menchi is going crazy. Buhara sat behind the sofa, looked down at his good partner, and patted his big belly sadly. The woman got angry, and even his fat body couldn't stop her anger. It is conceivable that the blind man has already been marked with a cross in Menchi's heart, not far from being sentenced to be out. However, the opponent is obviously not easy to mess with. Buhara looked at Roy cautiously. The opponent just shook him before and sent him flying. Obviously, the strength has reached the legendary, limit-breaking realm. If you say that such a person is an examinee, you will believe it. It is not too much to give him the title of 2-star hunter. Hehe. I might not be able to say anything else, but a very simple dish like nigiri sushi can be made by anyone. Roy touched Gon's dog's head with a smile, paused, and stopped talking. Candidates who are waiting for the following are anxious. Half of my pants have been taken off. Why did you break them? Ahem, I understand. Teacher Tianwei, tell me how to hold sushi. I bought it out of my pocket. It's you, Bokuer. A word that wakes up the dreamer. The warehouse exploded immediately. Mr. Tianwei, I am your century-old fan. You old man can't forget me. Go away. I started watching Pirate King since I was a child. You are a Mr. Tianwei. How much money do you say? Count me in. Damn. Don't squeeze those in the back. Teacher Tianwei, look at me. I have plenty of money. You can just tell me to be alone, and ignore them NTS. Maid. Your whole family is NT. Look for a dozen. Eat alone food, right? Brothers, F*K him. Oh, I don't dare. I don't dare, Mr. Tianwei, please help me. It's too late. Who the hell is pulling my pants? The crowd is turbulent. People are rushing to transfer money to Roy with their mobile phones. Waving bills in their hands, begging Roy to look at him everywhere. This scene. The two Xiaobai, Buhara and Menchi, were dumbfounded. Don't forget to make money during the exam. Who would want to get the attention? But this is Roy Zoldyck. Sachi quietly appeared beside Menchi, looked at Roy leisurely with his hands behind his back, and said, you will get used to it in the future. Bharat and Menchi. They looked at each other, then shook their heads resolutely. There is no future. Even if the president is here, he will be dumbfounded when he sees this picture. However, oh, old man, your grandson knows a lot. In the president's office, Netero is wearing a volleyball on his head, striding forward with one foot and following Roy with his eyes. The method of sushi kinda made him curious. My grandson has been smart since he was a child. You only know it now, it's too late. Maha glanced at Netero, and his two little hands flew up and down, patting his belly, looking very proud. The old guy is not ashamed. Fortunately there are no lesbians in the office, otherwise, Netero would have to kick him out. Hey, nigiri sushi is a side dish, you can't be smart enough to know. Netero approached Maha with a half smile, and whispered. Be honest, did you take this kid to that small island country? Based on your temperament, you don't go to the custom shop over there, do you? How about it, is the service there okay? F*KNMDD. Netero, be careful. I will sue you for defamation. Maha was angry. I am an old man, I am a decent person. Not as bad as you think. Even if you go, you're on a mission, but you. How do you know there's a custom shop over there? Maha squinted at Netero. Could it be that you have been there? Ahem. Netero gave a dry cough, and turned his head to look out the window. Oh, the weather outside is really nice. Duzi. Why don't you show the old man some tea? Bean Noodle Man. I seem to have heard something incredible. Trembling with fear, he let out a voice. Come on. I poured 2 cups of lemon tea and put them on the coffee table. When I looked up to face the TV, I saw. In the screen, Roy was smiling and was about to collect money, but was suddenly interrupted by a voice suppressing anger. Dao-sensei, is this really all right? Hanzo finally recovered from his bewilderment, glaring at Roy and asked. He doesn't believe that with Roy's wisdom, he won't be able to see. Hiding the method and passing the test secretly is far better than telling everyone the method and increasing so many competitors. But as Roy said to Bharat earlier, any reward is rewarding. Roy didn't intend to make sushi for Menchi for free from the beginning, so naturally he didn't want to leak it in a normal way. What's more, I'm waiting for the real examiner to arrive. Roy took a meaningful look at the sky, as Netero said, the weather is very good, suitable for the elderly to bungee jump. But what real examiner? Why didn't I see it? Tianwei, you guys, don't try to fool me. Hanzo glared at Roy with a gloomy face and said, Tano-sensei, I suggest you think carefully about it. Lele alone or Lele together? are you teaching me how to do things? Hanzo hadn't finished speaking, when the pair of pale eyes bumped into Roy. He suddenly felt an unprecedented pressure, which suddenly descended on him, forcing him to swallow the second half of the sentence into his stomach. It's okay, teacher abuse, you can continue. Hanzo's complexion changed, and he smiled sarcastically. But he secretly scolded himself for being confused. Impulsively, I almost forgot who it was. That is a monster that can blow Hisoka away with a slap, and shake the examiner away with a shoulder shake. He can do whatever he wants. Who can stop him? This is the truest operating rule of this world, strength is king. Actually, if you have any opinions, you can bring them up too. Roy smiled at Hanzo gently. As for whether I will abide by it, after you die, maybe God will tell you. Hanzo. 90-degree bow. Smi. Instead of apologizing, it's better to have something practical. Understood. 100 million nuns, please accept teacher Tianwei. Roy smiled with satisfaction. Good comrade, your heart is as shiny as your bald head. Is this a compliment? Hanzo's face darkened, and he backed away with a wry smile. Without his interference, the crowd who wanted to know how to nigiri sushi rushed forward and surrounded Roy directly. Immediately afterwards I heard, drip, your account with the end number 7086 received 30 million monies today. Please pay attention to check. The bank notification sound of, is endless. Menchi and Buhara, who were watching from the sidelines, were also stunned. Really insightful. If this guy Roy Zoldyck actually passed the hunter exam, guess what? Among hunters' many professions, a new profession will be added, Jun Hunter. That's right. Wherever this guy goes and earns money, he is a walking nun, a business ghost. HMPH. Menchi snorted coldly. Someone took advantage of her exam questions to make money, and really didn't take her seriously as an examiner. If this makes you pass, tell me, will I, Menchi, still hang around in the association in the future? With this in mind, Menchi made up her mind. Even if Roy made the sushi flowers later, she would give bad judgment and she would be eliminated. However, what is unexpected is that Roy, who received the money and was soft-handed, after sharing the method of mastering sushi with all the candidates, did not even look at the cutting board in front of him, and walked straight out of the warehouse with a cane. Hey, where are you going? Menchi was stunned for a moment, then she came to her senses and shouted at Roy. Leaving the examination room without authorization will be treated as a waiver. Don't regret it. With his back to Menchi, Roy paused and smiled. If I remember correctly, fish is needed to make sushi. But there is no fish in the warehouse, so, can't I go fishing by the stream? Huh. I thought meat would be enough. Gon ran after Roy with his short legs and said, Uncle, let's go, I'll be with you. Hey, Gon, I don't have a fishing rod, so I might as well rub yours. Leorio followed with his briefcase. Then there is Kurapika, Hisoka, Bankur, Gitaraker, who is the incarnation of Ilfans, even Hanzo, Tonpa, Kahlua. After being instructed by Roy, all of them left the warehouse and went straight to the creek. This hateful guy. I will never spare him. The last little thought was punctured. Menchi watched Roy leave, gritted her silver teeth, and almost died of anger. Beside her, Sachi and Buhara looked at each other, realizing that something was wrong. Under the cover of Buhara, taking advantage of Menki's furious time, Sachi walked out of the warehouse and found an unidentified man. The corner of the person dialed the phone above. Doo-doo. The call was connected, and the Domian man held the phone and whispered to Netero. President, it's Sa-si. Netero groaned, glanced at Maha, who was lying on the sofa with a dead body, and said without looking back, tell him, the old man is already on the way. The bean-faced man glanced at Netero, then secretly glanced at Maha, hissed. Yes. Haida sighed to answer. Grandpa, do you want to go too? At this moment, Netero stopped spinning the ball, looked at Maha and said, don't you miss your grandson? Just together, go see him. Who, Lu, Maha didn't seem to hear it, so he snored directly. Netero. Silent. This old thing, pretend. As soon as I mentioned seeing my grandson, I was scared. Was it because I was afraid that I would make a sentimental post and expose it? Netero is angry and funny, let him go. That's fine, he is an outsider, and he is really not suitable for mixing with the hunter test. Then. Oh ho 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 ho, Roy Zoldyck, let me meet you. Before the age of 18, the genius who broke the limit twice, can't help but remind Netero of his appearance when he was young. Those eyes that gradually became cloudy were miraculously cleared up, as if he had found a trace of youthfulness. "Uncle, are you really not going back?" By the creek not far from the warehouse, Gon was holding a fish, watching everyone catch the fish and running back to the warehouse, looking at Roy worriedly. The blind man sat cross-legged on a large bluestone, with his eyes closed tightly, his stick and knife resting on his knees, and he remained motionless, showing no sign of going back. "Gon, you go first." Seeing that Roy didn't answer, Kurapika signaled Leorio to drag Gon away. He sat down next to Roy, and quietly said, "Mr. Tianwei, are you waiting for the real examiner?" Counting every word Roy said in detail, there is a deep meaning in it. Others may forget, but Kurapika, who is very wise and close to demons, always keeps the word true in his heart. For this, Roy was not surprised at all that he would ask this sentence, and said slowly, "It's not just waiting for the real examiner. I'm also waiting for the real test. A test that only belongs to me." In a place that Kurapika couldn't see, the power ATM was quietly called out by Roy, and as the balance of the bank card was halved, Roy glanced at the panel. The strength attribute column has undergone earth-shaking changes. Name: Roy Zoldyck. Strength: 201, right pointing arrow 311, breaking the limit at the first level. The current power storage amount is 110 points. It cost 10 billion in exchange for 100 tons of power. A majestic torrent of power is hidden in Roy's body, ready to go. One person's test. Kurapika frowned thoughtfully, and suddenly had a premonition in her heart. Something terrible might happen next. He quietly looked at Roy. The blind man was the same as before. But the instinct jumped out and reminded Kurapika that the other parties seemed to be in a strange state, like an active volcano waiting to erupt. As soon as the momentum is fully charged, the most beautiful and brilliant, and also the most terrifying and desperate, fireworks in the world will be released. In an indescribable trance, Kurapika was stunned. Suddenly said, "Mr. Tianwei, sometimes, I feel that you and we are not living in the same world. The other party is covered in dense mist, and you can't see his whole picture from a peak. This is really hard for Kurapika, who is determined to become a bounty hunter, eliminate all evil and kill Phantom Troop. However, two is indeed. You are right, I am. Not from this world." Roy suddenly opened his eyes, glanced at Kurapika in surprise, retracted his gaze, and focused on the lush forest in front of him, smiled and said, "I see how charming Qingshan is. I guess Qingshan should be like this when he sees me. You feel this way, maybe it's because you are too weak. Strength does not support you to see a higher landscape, which is why I didn't tell you about the spider before." Kurapika suddenly touched his fists. He couldn't hear the word spider. That was his nightmare. Every time he dreamed back at midnight, the screams of his tribe would ring in his ears, and the cruel laughter of Phantom Troop. Afterwards, tossing and turning, unable to sleep all night. Maybe. The blond boy kept his head silent and tried to control his emotions. After a long while, he took a deep breath and spoke to break the silence. "I know I'm weak." Kurapika looked up at Roy's blind eyes, and said firmly, "But as you said, Mr. Tianwei, you have your own test. I also need an opportunity that belongs to me alone. When I have the qualifications to stand in front of you, please tell me the ending of Phantom Troop and my ending. I can tell you this right now." Roy reached out to catch a fallen leaf, stroked the fine and divergent lines on the fallen leaf, and said quietly, "You will live. Spiders will reduce staff, as for others, you know." It seemed like a thunderbolt exploded in Kurapika's ear. A smear of blood flickered in the depths of the blond boy's eyes, and his clenched fists were densely covered with veins. It looked so scary. As a human being, if you can't avenge this blood revenge, your life is indeed in vain. But cleverness is misunderstood by cleverness. When you Kurapika have the qualifications to stand in front of me, the so-called spiders are just a few stinky mice that can't get on the stage. Killing them is not easy, is it? So, did you overestimate Phantom Troop, or underestimate me, Roy? Thank you. I have been insulted too. 10 million nuns, as my mental damage fee. Roy's faint voice came, waking Kurapika out of control. Kurapika smiled wryly. I don't have that much money with me now. Then why are you standing still? Take your fish to take the exam. Roy glared at Kurapika, and co-authored. If you don't have money, why don't you let this amuse me? Kurapika directly turned into an embarrassing face. No, didn't you just talk about it? The real examiner hasn't arrived yet, so what's the point of me going to participate in the essay? It's true that I dislike me being poor. Kurapika bowed to Roy awkwardly, pierced a fish with a knife, and walked away in disgrace. Oh ho ho ho, if I read correctly, the young man just now is a survivor of the Karuta clan. Not long after Kurapika left, the familiar perverted laughter came from afar. Hisoka walked towards Roy slowly with his clown shoes on his feet, and stopped 10 meters away from him. Right pointing arrow Hiri the invisible shadow with crescent-shaped eyes. Shocked to see. The stream flowing along the hillside is densely covered with lines of thought. These thought lines are intricate. Some people make up the head, some make up the body, some make up the claws, and some make up the tail. Faintly looking, where is the stream? It is obviously a Nyen that has been stranded in the shoal dragon. Oh ho ho ho, recite with water, teacher Tianwei. You were really great. Please tell me, who is this for? It won't be for me. Thinking of this, Hisoka couldn't control himself anymore, twisted his body into a bow, opened his arms, and laughed recklessly. Muttering, Sabarasi, in his mouth, he raised his foot and wanted to move forward. Suddenly, but never thought about it, he was fixed in place by a purple gravity ring. Who is it prepared for? It's not for you, you are not worthy. Get lost. Oh ho ho ho, I was yelled at again. Under 10 times the force of gravity, Hisoka's body sank suddenly. He felt like he was carrying a hill on his back, his knees trembled, and he was barely standing, which is already considered amazing. Ah, it's great. That's how the perverted magician finally experienced the treatment of an ill fan, and smiled with satisfaction. He withdrew his foot and didn't take a step forward. Even if he couldn't see it, he could still feel that there was a bottomless gully running between him and Roy. If you don't go in, that's it. If you enter, you will fall into the abyss, and you will never recover. How long has it been? Hisoka has not experienced this taste of fear for an unknown amount of time. The man in front of him is sitting cross-legged on top of Nianlong, with his back facing him, with 5 hearts. The soles of the feet, the palms, with the heart on the top of the head, silently accumulating aura, just waiting to adjust his aura to the peak, for the sake of another person. How could it be repaired? That person is worthy of my Tiano's doing this. I really want to go crazy with envy. The gravity ring entrenched above his head dissipated. Hisoka looked at Roy's back with fiery eyes, knowing that he had realized that he had no intention of moving forward, so he simply sat down cross-legged and fiddled with the poker cards in his hand. Shua. The playing cards were stacked in the shape of a pyramid, and then pushed down by Hisoka stretching out a finger. In the abandoned factory building behind the two, Roy didn't expect. A storm is brewing. Qualified. Unqualified. You're not qualified either. Can this be considered nigiri sushi? Go back and redo it. Bah. It's so unpalatable. Why did you put so much vinegar in it? Are you trying to make me sour? And you. People have told you the method, and you can still make such a ghost. The money of 30 million monks is for nothing, right? Go back. Go back and redo everything. It really pissed me off. Why don't you all go home and fight again next year? After a round of nigiri sushi, Gon, Leorio, Kurapika, Snake Babu, Pindwoodwo, C and others were all defeated. Either the shape is bad, or the seasoning is misplaced, or the taste simply can't satisfy Menchi's taste buds. Even Hanzo, who was born in a small island country, was killed by a knife, by Menchi. Bah. You still claim to be born in a small island country, but the appearance is quite similar. Why is the taste so unpalatable? Take it. Go back and redo it. Menchi glanced at Hanzo in disappointment. His forehead was shining brightly, but he didn't expect that in cooking, he was also an out-and-out garbage. Hanzang was furious, stared at Menchi in disbelief and said, "What did you say? Isn't the so-called nigiri sushi a ball of rice shaped into a rectangle, then a layer of sashimi, a little wasabi, and finally a little soy sauce? Everyone does it, and I don't believe that there is no one who can't satisfy you." Thanks to Roy. Everyone knows how to make nigiri sushi. With such a large base here, Hanzo couldn't believe it. No one could catch Menchi's eyes. Indeed. This has touched the hearts of all the candidates. If it involves complicated dishes such as frying, steaming, frying, and roasting. How difficult is it to make a nigiri sushi with bare hands without even firing a fire? It's not like everyone can't pass the test. That's because someone didn't want to let anyone go from the very beginning. If you don't enter the warehouse, you know about the warehouse. A sneer appeared on the corner of Roy's mouth. What he didn't tell the 10 candidates before was that the sashimi needed for sushi is not freshwater fish. It's seawater fish. However, there is no sea in Shimmel wetland. So easy. What are you farting? With cross veins emerging on Menchi's forehead, she grabbed Hanzo by the collar and roared, "Try telling me again. Ignorant guy. To know that nigiri sushi needs to be made well, even a professional chef will have to spend 10 years of hard work, do you understand? You laymen can only imitate the appearance at most. Compared with the master, the taste is far worse." Fool. Hanzang was sprayed with saliva, and said unconvinced, "Since this is the case, don't come up with such a bad question. Stop rambling. Are you dissatisfied?" Menchi said with enthusiasm, "If you say anything more, I'll kill you." On the side, Buhara and Sachi, seeing this, looked at each other, both speechless. The fat man slapped his forehead. I knew that Menchi's old problem was repeated. As long as he gets excited, he will definitely be more picky about the taste of the dishes. Fortunately, it wasn't Roy but Hanzo who was caught by him. Huh. Buhara thought of this, and suddenly froze. Where's that guy Roy? I don't know. Sachi was also startled, looked at each other with Buhara, and said, "You keep an eye on Diamenchi, I'll go take a look." The human-faced ape examiner was dispatched, and C disappeared into the warehouse in a flash, and ran towards the creek along the path the examinee had come back from. After a while, he saw Roy, and he was about to breathe a sigh of relief when the clinker. There was a soft sound of shoo. A ghost card with the appearance of Joker pierced the sky, one step ahead of him, and stuck in front of him, blocking his way. Oh ho ho ho, examiner, I advise you not to move forward. Blind? Didn't see my apple, gaining momentum. The corners of Hisoka's mouth were pulled up obliquely, hooked into a deep versus shape, looked at Sachi in a sinister manner, smiled strangely. Murderous aura suddenly burst out from his body, and rushed towards Sachi. There is a god ahead, stop me. Sachi frowned, stopped in his tracks, and didn't move forward. He was very surprised by Hisoka's attitude. Why did he react so strongly? Look ahead, the eyes are exactly the same as Hisoka's, suddenly stare wide. Yeah, it's really scary. Thinking of turning into a dragon? Roy Zoldyck, wants to drive what? The amazing Nianlong is lying at Roy's feet. As if aware of Sachi's gaze, Nianlong glanced at Sachi lightly, and his pupils turned out to be a strange gray-white. Roy's blind eyes put SATs under unprecedented pressure. Dingalingling. There was a sudden warning sign in his heart, and there was no need for Hisoka's warning. Saci took the initiative to stop, knowing that he had been exposed. How long will it take for Netero to arrive? At this moment, a leisurely voice came into Sachi's ears. Roy seemed to have an eye behind him, and easily captured Sachi's position. President, How did he know that the president was coming? Could it be that all the preparations he made were aimed at the president? Saci was startled in horror, his two mustaches trembled visibly with the naked eye, as if he had been hit by the immobilization spell, and he froze in place. Oh ho ho ho, Sparachi, is that guy Netero? It's great. It's so exciting. Hisoka smiled and hugged himself, trembling uncontrollably. Challenge Netero directly? Dao-sensei, you are more attractive than I imagined. Sure enough. Roy Zoldyck, he is crazy. Zoldyck squinted his eyes, his ears were not deaf, and he naturally listened to Hisoka's words. After being stunned for a while, Wang said, "The president will be there in a while." Then Sachi focused his eyes on Roy's back, and couldn't help asking, "May I know what your purpose is for doing this? If you want to pass the exam, you don't have to do it." Sa presided over the hunter test, not once or twice, but it was the first time to see a candidate as crazy as Roy. Sure enough, there is no normal person with the surname Zoldyck. It cannot be judged by common sense at all. Of course it's for the money, of course, you can't tell the outside world about taking the experience of the president of the conference. Roy made up a random excuse, smiled and said, "I heard that the Hunter Association is backed by V5, and the annual funding it receives is astronomical. So, I was wondering if I could beat the old man Netero to death and snatch his president Dang. What do you think of this purpose? It's simply too good." Before Sachi could speak, Hisoka pulled the playing cards into an accordion with a swish, and really wanted to play a hymn to Roy on the spot. Of course, it would be even better if there is no fly with a stinky face next to it. Bear. Kill the president? Are you serious? Sax could tell. The situation is not something he can handle right now, so he should just wait until the president arrives. Anyway, he will be there soon. Saci glanced back at the warehouse. The conflict between Menchi and the examinee seemed to have reached a point of no return, so deal with it urgently. Really? There isn't a decent one. I announce the second pass, everyone is unqualified. After tasting so much sushi, Menchi almost vomited, and was too lazy to deal with these culinary rookies, so she simply called the review committee and reported the result. Buhara stood behind her, looking at her helplessly, knowing that she would come to this point. He opened his mouth to persuade her a few words, but was shut up by Menchi, less wordy, sealed, firmly. Who dares to have an opinion on the results I gave? In short, the result is that no one has passed the second level, above. However. Are you kidding me? She's serious, everyone is unqualified. Isn't she deceiving too much? In my opinion, she is just playing with us. I have gone through a lot of hardships to get here. I never thought that I would fall in the level of cooking. I am not reconciled. I am clearly here with the dream of becoming a bounty hunter. I don't want to be a shitty gourmet hunter. The crowd exploded. Except for Kahlua, who has a game attitude, and ill fans who don't care. Everyone is outraged. Sack. How can it just end like this? A little kid with a hedgehog head couldn't help it, and as soon as he slipped out, he ran to Menchi's side and snatched the phone from her hand. Pause. Listen to me. You must pass the hunter test before you can find my father. Give me back the phone. Menchi snatched the phone back from Gon's hand, and said indifferently, that's really a pity. However, the standard of passing the hunter test is entirely up to the examiner, that is, it is up to me to decide. I said no one is qualified, and no one is qualified. Do you understand, little brother? Gon. A group of candidates. Silent. Gritting his teeth, especially Toto. This guy raised his fist angrily, and was about to fall down. Suddenly, he heard a lively laughter coming in from afar. Hoo, even so. Menchi, isn't it a little too strict for you to judge that there are no qualified candidates? 1. Who is it? Hearing this voice suddenly, everyone was startled, subconsciously looked up at the sky. A flying ship with the logo of the Hunter Association burst into everyone's eyes and flew above the warehouse. That's the Hunter Test Review Board ship. Someone with sharp eyes recognized the origin of the flying ship. Exclamation caused an uproar. Oh ho, is it finally here? I really can't wait to see someone perform. Hisoka turned his head and glanced at the sky, a blush of excitement appeared on his pale face like a clown. Sachi glanced at him, a certain perverted magician, who is afraid that the world will not be chaotic, maybe. Only the president can handle it. But also. Before that, the more difficult one was the one, grandfather. Listen to the wailing sound of the air being shredded by the propeller. Roy suddenly opened his blind eyes, and a gentle smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Is it finally here? It really makes people have enough to wait. And buzz. The flying ship hovered directly above the warehouse, and the hatch was pulled open from the inside out. Under the horrified eyes of Gon, Kahlua, Kurapika, Ilmi, Leorio, Tonpa, Hanzo and other candidates. A small black dot suddenly jumped down from the flying boat that was 100 meters above the ground. Hula. The air seemed to be unable to withstand the force of the falling black spot, and let out a piercing whine. But after hearing a loud bang, the ground trembled, and smoke and dust rose up everywhere, but was swept away by someone with a flick of his sleeve. Only then did everyone see clearly. This black spot is an old man wearing a martial arts uniform, wearing wooden clogs, and a samurai head pierced on the back of his head. He has long eyebrows and a beard, hanging eyes as if he doesn't care about anything, a pair of long Buddhist ears, each wearing 2 fashionable earrings. One dared to meet his gaze. Will. President. Menchi murmured as she stared at Netero with her eyes wide open. When the voice fell to the ground, there was a commotion. Wow, this grandpa is amazing, Gon exclaimed. Jumping from such a high place, it's all right, it's incredible. Yeah. Did the old man wear a pair of spring legs? Kahlua stared at Netero's legs. The other party stepped on wooden clogs and came slowly. Every step seemed to be measured, not too much, it didn't look like it had spring legs installed. Hiss. But doesn't he hurt? Leorio couldn't help but gasp. Who is this old man? Look. Returning to the true TM has become the norm. Stupid, haven't you heard the word, chairman? Kurapika rolled his eyes at Leorio, looked at Netero solemnly, his eyes flickered, thinking that this is the real examiner, that Mr. Tianwei said. I just didn't expect the other party's background to be so big. In other words, Dao Sensei, the test he said belongs to him alone, is it? Suddenly an absurd idea popped up in my mind. Kurapika was stunned. At this time, when they saw Netero coming, Menchi and Buhara hurriedly bowed to Netero and said, It's been a long time since I greeted you. President Netero. Well, Tro. Why does it sound familiar? The examinees chewed on Menchi's words, and the more they thought about it, the more they felt familiar. Fortunately, they didn't need to consume too much brainpower. Saucy, who saw Netero coming, turned around and walked towards the crowd, and said while walking, he is the chairman of the review committee, that is, the person in charge of the hunter test with the highest status. N. Huh. He's so great. Gon's eyes widened. Beside him, Kahlua didn't know when he was next to him, and sighed. That's it, no wonder. 1. Aren't you Uncle's younger brother? Cut, you've got the wrong person. The two little kids suddenly looked at each other and let out a no sound at the same time, embarrassed. His eyes turned away altogether, and shifted to Netero. It's said to be the person in charge, but in fact, the old man is just an ordinary person working behind the scenes. At this moment, Netero had his hands behind his back, and Shiren nodded at Sachi, then took a serious look at Menchi, and said meaningfully, only come out to deal with disputes. So, Roy, aren't you very happy to see the old man coming? I also specially made a festive dragon to welcome the old man. Oh. The old man is really flattered. Hey, Tui, what are you laughing at? Don't be ashamed. My grandson is also what you can call me. In the president's office, the snoring Maha faced the TV, and suddenly woke up. His eyes widened, almost didn't scare the situation to death. Damn. You always pretend to be asleep. The bean-faced man shrank in the corner, and was specially instructed by Netero to watch the house. Seeing that Maha woke up, he quickly shrank back into the corner again, muttering incessantly, You can't see me. You can't see me. In the end, he was still grabbed by the neck by Maha, carried him over, and pressed his legs. Tisk. Look, this is the president of your family. Jumping directly from the sky, you can really pretend to be B. So I, the old man, just can't like him, and pretend and stand up. What's with that? Maha thought hard, then patted his belly, and remembered. Yes. Just like the little girl in the custom shop. In the words of you young people, what is it called? You are a bitch, right? Bean Noodle Man. Don't you keep looking at me? I didn't mess with you. The Doomian man is about to cry. President. Please. Come back soon. Turn your head and look pitifully at Netero on the screen. The old man with a fairy demeanor and an image of a master directly named Roy's name with a smile. Immediately, everyone on the scene. Roy? Who is that? Is there any of us called Roy? All the candidates looked at me, I looked at you, and looked at each other. I heard a scream suddenly exploded, breaking the silence. Eh? What did you say? Roy is Uncle's real name? Gon looked at Kilua's white-haired stinky brother in surprise and curled his lips. Why, is there anything strange? Although I really don't want to admit it, my brother's name is indeed Roy, which is your teacher Tianwei. Huh? Teacher Tianwei? Damn. What about others? A commotion erupted in the crowd. Hanzo, Babu, Qingli, Greta, Tompa and others looked around, searching for Roy. At the edge of the jungle stream not far away, the blind man with bare upper body and muscles like granite lazily stretched his waist, and slowly stood up with his back to the crowd. Yes, President Netero. If you always like this dragon, how about giving it to you? Nianlong raised his head, opened his mouth, and roared fiercely. A strong wind blows from the ground, rustling the leaves, and trembling the forest. Roy turned around and looked at Netero with a smile. His exaggerated height of more than 2 meters was 2 heads taller than Netero. Netero stroked his beard, he smiled. When you are young and arrogant, you dare not accept it. What dragon? Why didn't I see it? Their eyes kept wandering around Roy and Netero, and all the candidates guessed suspiciously. Are these two people playing some charades here? Not to mention the dragon, even the ghost of a snake can't be seen at the scene. No. The dragon they're talking about. Couldn't be the one that Uncle showed on the Poseidon? Gone. Kurapika and Leorio looked at each other tacitly and looked at each other. Apart from them, it is not impossible to see some way. For example, Menchi, Barret, Sachi, and Gitarakar and Hisoka who are the incarnations of Ermi. I said why can't I see this guy's shadow? I dare say he is going to gain momentum. Buhara looked at the exaggerated Nianlong, crouching at Roy's feet. The corners of his eyes twitched fiercely with a twitch. He said to Menchi with his ear. Hey, Menchi, isn't this guy coming after us? Does he think he can't pass the exam, so he just fights recklessly? Oh my god, the Zoldykes are really scary. Please keep your mouth shut if you can't speak. Menchi gave Bara a blank look, then turned her head and stared at Roy. She clearly remembered that Roy was the only guy who didn't make nigiri sushi. He doesn't seem to take himself seriously. He doesn't even bother to do the most basic perfunctory. It's really hateful. It's a pity. You guys are overthinking. Sachi glanced at Buhara and Menchi, shook his head and said, we really don't deserve to be put in his eyes. Although I really don't want to admit it. Is it you, Buhara, who think you can defeat him? Are you, Menchi, who think you can? Bharat and Menchi. He lowered his head and didn't speak. Suddenly he reacted and was stunned again. No. It's not aimed at us, so who is he aiming at? Buhara and Menchi turned their necks stiffly, and looked at Netero. Good guy, didn't they come for the president? Hiss, if that's the case. This guy is too bold, I can't help but testify. Are you daring to act recklessly? Sasi nodded in agreement, secretly said. The surname Zoldyck, it seems that the word, fear, does not exist in the natural dictionary. There's nothing surprising about audacity, hee, that's such a pity. Since you are always unwilling to accept it, I can't force it. But, do I have to pay the peeping fee? Roy looked at Netero with a straight face and said, being surrounded by people like a monkey has caused me so much mental damage. I have to explain it. Netero. Seeing it with my own eyes seems to be even more outrageous than seeing it on TV. Huaos. Don't talk about those useless things. Roy held a stick knife in his hand, and Nianlong was lying on his feet, and said calmly, my old man called me to compensate me for the 10 billion yuan. For the sake of your elders. I'll give you two choices. Roy held up 2 fingers. First, hand over 10 billion, this matter is over. Second, hand over 10 billion and give me a hunter license by the way, what do you think? Does it make any difference? Gon scratched the back of his head, feeling a little dazed. Not only him, everyone present looked at Roy dumbfounded, very suspicious. How could he dare to say such a sentence? The other party is the president of the Netero Hunter Association. The world's #1 martial arts expert. I'm not your fan of Tiano. Please, Tiano, be sober. Netero didn't respond yet, and Buhara and Sachi, who were following behind him, looked at each other and looked at each other. Menchi couldn't bear it anymore, and walked out bravely. It happened because of me, let me go deal with it. However, before she could make a move, a flying card was nailed to Menchi's feet with a shua, blocking her way. I saw Hisoka smiling, glanced at her lightly and said, don't disturb me watching the show, Mr. Examiner. A battle between 2 of the world's most alluring apples. Is there anything more exciting than this? Oh ho ho ho, I'll kill anyone who dares to spoil my interest. Hisoka stuck out his tongue and licked the playing cards, and the murderous aura exuded from his whole body firmly locked on Menchi, Buhara, Sachi and others. I didn't think about it, but was crushed by a skinny old hand protruding out with a random wave. Young people shouldn't be so angry. Netero glanced at Hisoka blankly, took a step forward. The end of the world. Within an inch, he came to Roy with piercing eyes. He looked at him and said, boy, the hunter license, I can't decide. But 10 billion, if you want, the old man can give it to you at any time. But there is one condition. The world's #1 martial arts expert flicked his sleeves, and said calmly, you have to show a talent worthy of the tens of billions. A boy who is less than 18 years old and has twice broken the limit, although the person standing in front of you is an old man, but you cannot be underestimated. If you want money, take out your ability and get it yourself. Naturally. Roy laughed. Since the day I decided to come to the hunter test, I have been waiting for this moment in my dreams. Now. To tell you the truth, President Netero, I have seen through your 10 horns. The panel flashed brightly, and in a place that no one could see, the attribute bar belonging to Netero was displayed in front of Roy. Name. Netero Isaac. Bone age, 119 years old. Constitution. Invisible. Speed. Invisible. Power. 399. Normal person 10, remarks. Double breaking the limit, because the opponent is too old, his blood has declined, and he has fallen into the peak state of the first breaking limit. Volume. 399. Normal person 10, remarks. Double breaking the limit, because the opponent is too old, his blood has declined, and he has fallen into the peak state of the first breaking limit. Fashong. Avalokitesvara in 100 forms. Very strong. I have to admit that the other party is the strongest person Roy has seen so far, except for Maha. 2 levels of limit breaking in strength and aura. If it wasn't because of age that he fell to the peak of breaking the limit in the first level, Roy wouldn't even be able to see it. Just like physique and speed, There are question marks because Roy himself has not broken the limit. But that's good enough. As long as you can see the corner, you can understand where the gap is, and the rest just need to work hard to catch up. Ho 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 ho. Have you seen through the corner of the old man? Netero squinted his eyes, and at the moment just now, he really felt as if he had been scanned by X-rays, and unexpectedly gave birth to a rare I got a feeling of being really seen. This is really a rare room that I haven't seen for many years. But boy, the martial arts talent is important, but what is more important is years of training and accumulation. It's not that the old man is boasting. The old man's palm is 110 years of skill. Are you ready? With his hands behind his back, Netero looked seriously at the boy Roy, with a stick and a knife in his hand, and his feet lying on the Nianlong, my own self, the same fresh clothes and angry horse. It's great to be in high spirits. Old man, didn't I say it? I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Clang. The stick knife shone coldly, was held by Roy with both hands, and slowly pulled out. This is the first time it has come out of the body and appeared in front of all the candidates. He is really crazy. But why does this kind of madness make me tremble with excitement? The blade reflected the sunlight, forming arcs of light that shone on the faces of the candidates. Hanzo, Babu, Burns, Chingli, Toto, Greta. As if they had been rehearsed in advance, they couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva, and their eyes fixed on Roy. Have a sense of pride. Damn, who has ever seen a rookie who hasn't even passed the hunter license, and feels like facing the #1 person in the world in the afternoon? Hey, I've seen it before. I'm still at the same age as this person, Mr. Tianwei. You're so damn awesome, damn it. Mad, I will stay away from this person. Tonpa, who was among the crowd, noticed this scene and stepped back quietly. He did not forget Roy's meaningful throw in the underground passage. That glance. Damn it, being caught by such a ruthless person, there is nothing good to eat. TCH, you guys are exaggerating too much. The white-haired and smelly brother whistled and said nonchalantly, beating the #1 person in the world will make you feel numb. I was chased and beaten by my brother every day. Did I say anything? Are you showing off naked? Gon poked Kahlua. Hey, you're fine. Why don't you F***K? He gave Gon a fierce look. You disgusting brat, you are indeed my brother's follower. You hate it. Shish, shut up. Leorio and Kurapika held Gon and Kahlua down one by one, and glared at them angrily. Didn't you see a lot of people looking over with unkind eyes? 2 idiots, disturbing everyone I watched to play. HMPH, you should feel lucky to witness the battle between the president and Roy Zoldyck, instead of making noise here. Sachi glanced at this side coldly, and quickly shifted his gaze to Netero and Roy. I think, with the strength of these 2 little devils, it is not enough to see the excitement of this upcoming battle place. Oh ho ho ho, in places where the crowd couldn't notice, the 5 people, Hisoka, Yurmi, Menchi, Buhara, and Sachi, directly used condensation to cover their eyes with a layer of chi, strengthened his dynamic vision and perception for fear of missing every next detail. An invisible wave collided with Netero and Roy as the center. Kurapika recalled the conversation with Roy just now by the stream, his eyes stretched out a touch of crimson, and he understood immediately. The test that belongs exclusively to Teacher Tiano has begun. Hula. A gust of wind poured into the forest, blowing off a leaf, fluttering and flying into the eyes of Netero and Roy, suddenly. However, it seemed as if they had been given a body-holding technique, which directly violated the laws of physics and was imprisoned in the air in the center of the 2 of them. Seeing this scene, all the examinees were surprised. Monk Jong-er was puzzled, and still couldn't figure out what was going on. Looking around, I saw the 3 examiners and individual candidates, such as Hisoka and Yurmi, all staring at each other and quietly clenched their fists. This is Zindaikwan listening. Good boy, when I'm not around, the old man will start to show his face and bully my grandson, right? In the president's office, Ma Ha was gnawing on iced watermelon, spitting out the watermelon seeds, glaring at the bean noodle man, and scolding. Look at your president, it's not something, be serious when you come up, and you can't get along with a child, isn't it cheap? If I remember correctly, it was your grandson who wrote the challenge book first. The Do-Mian man licked his face and said with a smile, don't be angry, although the president is so serious, your grandson is not too serious. Isn't it bad? That's a pretty good statement. Maha snorted, you don't have much strength, you have gained a lot of knowledge after following Netero all the year round. It can be seen that my grandson has kept up with Netero, and has also entered the state of Shin Di Quan Ting. I am very happy, old man. I will give you a piece of melon to eat. Maha handed the watermelon he gnawed to the bean noodle man. Bean noodle man. Annoyed, he turned his head and glanced at the TV beam. Chairman, come on. He bullied me, you beat his grandson hard for me. Netero seems to be unable to hear the words of the bean-faced man, and has no time to listen to him. He stood on the spot with his hands behind his back, and looked at Roy across the leaf, as if he had entered a wonderful state of forgetting things. When I came up, I was stunned by a group of people. Eh? Uncle and that grandpa don't move anymore? Gon tugged at Kurapika's sleeve, and asked quietly. Among the group of four, he identified, apart from Roy who was fighting, Kurapika has become the second think tank of the small group, at least in Gon's view. He's obviously much better than a good-for-nothing Leorio. I don't know. Kurapika frowned, taking advantage of the gap that no one else could notice. His eyes were already turning dark red. But the only surviving boy of the Karuta tribe, Aura Nodes, has not yet been opened. Even if the red eyes are fully opened, it is completely the same as Shahara, Menchi, Sachi, and Hisoka who used condensation. Ilfans. Better than. It's not that you don't move, but you can't see it. Sachi's leisurely voice came, and he kindly explained to all the doubtful examinees present. The two of them have now entered a kind of called, the wonderful state of, Zindan listening. It is said that people will experience a magical revolving lantern before they die, and they will review their life in a very short period of time. Under the blessing of this state, time and space will be shielded and become completely meaningless concepts. Only the spirit and will or the soul remains in it, which is the so-called Shin Di Quan Ting. It's also a phenomenon that rarely occurs in expert duels. Sa Si eloquently explained what he knew about Shin Di Quan listening, to all candidates, but limited by his strength. What he didn't know was the real Shin Di Quan Ting is more than that. In addition to the momentary distorted stillness of time and space, under the blessing of the Shin Di Quan Ting state, both the caster and the caster can even be abnormal to the point of peep into each other's heart. Because heart drop equals time feeling fist listening equals opponent's thoughts, this is the true meaning of Shin Di Quan Ting. In the original book, when Geno rides a giant dragon and brings Netero to the palace of the Ant King in the form of dragon stars, the Catwoman Neferpitou, who was in charge of guarding the palace, jumped up, wanting to step forward to stop it. At this moment, she entered the state of Zindan listening to the thoughts of Yang Tedu. I expected several modes of attack and defense, but I didn't expect you to come up with such a bad move, little ant. In less than 0.001 second, Neferpitou hurriedly got out of the state of Shin Di Quan Ting, and only then realized that he had find the wrong person. The other party's thoughts are as quiet and terrifying as the vast ocean. If you don't move, you will be fine, and if you move, you will set off a tsunami, which can engulf her at any time. And at this time, Roy, who actively followed Netero into the field of Zindan listening, also felt the horror of Netero, but he didn't behave like Catwoman because of this. On the contrary, he was so excited. The advanced opponent is undoubtedly the target of excessive liver experience. Old man, you are more terrifying than I imagined. Oh ho 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 ho, are you scared? Netero twitched his beard, winked at Roy and said, if you take the initiative to admit defeat, I will not consider playing 10 points less. That's not necessary. Roy stopped talking nonsense, called out, Nianlong, and said lightly, arm. The colorless Nianlong, who has been tempered and honed through the stream, flicked his tail, stained with ink, and finally emerged, showing his real body in the astonished eyes of all the candidates. Mom. Dragon. Look. Mad. There really are dragons. The ninefold true dragon of Sixu comes out, washing away all the mortal horses of all ages. All the examinees who were still suspicious of Netero and Roy's riddles were all paralyzed. Nianlong has a winding body that is nearly a kilometer long, raised its head and roared, and the floating clouds in the sky were instantly shaken away. This familiar scene seems like the next day. Gon, Kurapika and Leorio, who were lucky enough to witness this scene on the Poseidon, at that time, even though they had guessed in their hearts, they were still shocked by this overbearing dragon. Not to mention a group of rookies who saw Aura Nodes for the first time and didn't even know what Nian is. Worry, you are indeed Mr. Tianwei who can draw the Pirate King. NM's dragons can be created, that guy Monkey D. Drago, could it be Mr. Tianwei who used himself as a template to create it? It's possible that even I think those devil fruits are not fabricated out of thin air. Damn it. When you say that, I get goosebumps. Do you want to be so exaggerated? The exclamation is loud. The rookies watch the fun. Experts watch the doorway. In the eyes of all candidates, the Nianlong is a dragon. But in the eyes of Buhara, Menchi, Sachi, Hisoka, and Yurmi, the Nianlong is not just a dragon, but Roy's performance after breaking the limit of strength. Without a large enough chi, it is impossible to support such a long dragon, let alone exile it in the stream for training. It's really outrageous. And at this moment, the armed Nianlong flicked its tail, made ripples, and carried Roy straight to Netero. Ho 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 ho. Well done. Netero moved his shoulder blades, and his feet landed on the ground with a slap. His horse gated up, and he didn't even dodge, waiting for Nianlong to open his mouth and rush at him bite. The old man snorted. Get up. Keenly caught a gap, lowered his waist slightly, stretched out his arms. His palms were like knives, inserted into the neck of Nianlong, and then slammed it hard. A beautiful over-the-shoulder throw directly landed Roy and Nianlong on the ground. Wow. This grandpa has great strength. Gon opened his mouth wide and exclaimed. Just listen, boom, there was a loud noise. Zindan listening. The state is broken, revealed the real scene. I saw a place full of smoke and dust. The Nianlong, who was accustomed to the ground, rolled and let out a wail. But Roy was missing from the corner of the towering head. Where's Mr. Tianwei? A group of candidates saw what it means to be the number one person in the world. I hurriedly searched for Roy, thinking, he won't be crushed into meat paste by President Netero with one move, right? But I didn't think about it. There was a sudden scream, pulling everyone's thoughts back to reality. Look up. The sun was shining golden in the sky, but at some point, a black spot blocked the sun. He was naked to the upper body, holding a stick knife in his hand. His eyes were closed tightly, his feet stepped on ripples, and he walked down slowly. Every time he landed, it was as if a ladder of air was born out of thin air, holding him firmly. Looking closely, it was not Roy, Dao-sensei. Who else could it be? Oh my god. Why did Mr. Tianwei run away, to the sky? Shouts came one after another. 10 candidates including Hanzo, Babu, Burns, Qingli, and Greta watched in shock as Rover climbed down the stairs. Everyone was stupid. Don't you know? Uncle can fly. Gon's innocent voice sounded. It failed to solve everyone's doubts, but it added fuel to the flames and caused an even bigger uproar. I am not blind, I can see for myself. The key is, how did he do it? Buhara, Menchi, Sachi, Hisoka, and Yurmi obviously felt more deeply than these rookies. It seemed that they could vaguely hear some small sonic booms, and the rippling ripples at the feet of Yanyi were transmitted. Come out. So for sure. It's not some nen, it feels more like body art. Ho 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 ho. Interesting. Facing Roy, no one could see it more carefully and clearly than Netero. Those tiny sonic booms were nothing else. It was Roy who relied on his own tyrannical strength to forcefully the whine of stomping on the air. What pace is this? Netero looked up at Roy with great interest. Roy said lightly, Moonsteps. Netero chewed for a while, then nodded. A good name. Very vivid. As he said that, with a playful attitude, he tried to step on his feet, and there was a bang. The air exploded, and a weak air force was born, which actually supported him and stepped towards the sky. Go up. And with this first step, there will be a second step, and a third step. Just like this. Bang, bang, bang. Netero actually imitated Roy crookedly and flew into the sky. From the rawness at the beginning to the proficiency in a few steps, to the final mastery. This level of learning talent is really shocking. President. This is the gold content of the world's first person. A group of candidates, including several examiners, witnessed Netero ascending to the sky, with enthusiastic and envious eyes. But the battlefield is not your training ground, old man. Roy stopped, stood on the sky, quietly watched Netero walking step by step. The corner of his mouth curled up, and the hand holding the stick knife suddenly swiped down. A furious slash hit Netero's eyebrows. Gravity knife tiger. The white-fronted tiger with hanging eyes is wrapped with purple gravity lines and appears in the world as it slashes. With 4 claws planing, he pounced on Netero. The leader of the assembly, who had just learned moonsteps, felt as if he was hit head-on by a mountain in an instant. With a sound of bang, it flew back upside down, smashed straight into the ground, and fell headlong. Okay. In the president's office, Maha sat up and watched the TV excitedly. The sudden movement almost scared the Domian to death. What's going on again? This is. The bean-faced man followed Maha's gaze. The president he relied on for help. His head was down, his feet were up, he was stuck in the ground, and his feet were kicking the wooden clogs or tossed and tossed with the wind. Just look at it. President. Can you still do it? Bean Noodle Man. Just like many examinees at the scene, as well as Buhara, Menchi, and Sachi, people are just stupid. About the fact that my most admired president was chopped off with a knife, does it really exist? Gudong. The voices of swallowing saliva sounded one after another. Menchi couldn't believe what she saw, and rushed towards Netero, trying to pull him out. Stop it. It's a pity it's not too late. When Menchi heard these 3 words, she had already stepped into the attack range of the gravity knife tiger. She immediately lay down. Visible to the naked eye. Standing up and not going out, was forced to hold his head by 50 times the gravity, and gnawed a mouthful of mud. The dignified 1-star food hunter never dreamed that he would have the day of eating mud. I don't know if it is irony or irony. In short, it is extremely embarrassing. Oh ho ho ho, is mud also a delicacy? If you want to eat it so much, tell me earlier. The ruthless ridicule hangs on his face. Hisoka's eyes are bent into crescents, and the look of needing to be beaten is reflected in Buhara's eyes. If it wasn't for Sachi who quietly held him by the side, he might have given him a big pocket. Oh, Menchi, your temper will kill you one day. A faint long sigh came out. With a sound of bow, Netero pulled himself out, and under the high pressure 50 times the gravity, he walked to Menchi's side and reached out to catch it. Throw her out of the gravity circle. SMI Marseille. Without the tyrannical gravity exerted on his body, Menchi suddenly felt his shoulders loosen. A kite flipped over, landed smoothly, and did not dare to look into Netero's eyes. Hurriedly ran to the side and vomited. There was a continuous retching sound. All the examinees are listening. You look at me, I look at you, I can't express the pleasure. Damn it. To ruin other people's future is to kill their parents. Mr. Tianwei drives beautifully. It's just that, in front of the president of the Hunter Association, he offended people terribly. Boy, this knife is strong, but it's not enough. Someone once practiced boxing in the ice and snow. Some people will stride in the thick heat wave. Some people will exercise their thought power against the waterfall. Some people will think hard all year round, just to break through the limit of their own martial arts, and finally come to the conclusion, thank you, Second Minister. Thanks to the talent bestowed by God, let him have a physical talent that is unmatched among hundreds of millions of people. Thanks to my hard work, let others reach middle age, martial arts prosper, punching faster than the speed of sound. In turn let yourself the teacher willingly bowed down, knelt down to worship the teacher. He is the strongest human being. A Netero who prays every day and is known as Guanyin. Wow. This old man fell on his head from such a high place, nothing happened, is he still human? Seeing Nit Luo moving his arms and legs under 50 times the force of gravity, and walking in the garden, compared with Menchi who ran aside and vomited. The world is so different that it is unimaginable. Remind you, take a step back, in case it is affected, the Hunter Association will not be responsible. The battles of the top powerhouses cannot be judged by common sense at all, and C. Rongbo will behave like an ordinary person. Even if you don't have to remind me, no one will be stupid enough to get into the battle circle. Not enough. Roy had expected that the knife did not cause substantial damage to the opponent. He looked down at Netero. The old man put his hands on his hips, raised his head and looked back at him with a smile. 399 points. The power that broke the limit twice is no joke. That's right. I never expected to be able to kill you with one knife, old man. Hey, the Nianlong, who had been thrown in a mess before recovered his strength, and suddenly got out of the ground, aiming at Teshuan and biting. Seeing such an opportunity, Roy took a deep breath and moved. There was a muffled sound of bow. The blind man's exaggerated muscles that were comparable to granite suddenly swelled again, and a layer of red fluorescent light could be seen slowly oozing out of his body with the naked eye. That is the expression of full of energy and blood, all activated. Paper-painted martial body. Ignoring its own size, it concentrated its attributes on one point. In the Battle of Judiciary Island, Leopard Man, Rob Lucci relied on this trick to raise his agility a tribute to the upper limit and incarnate into a real cheetah in the sense of. And unlike him, Roy improves power. Since the strength is not enough, then just add more. Gravity knife. Tooth protrusion. Step on both feet, a sonic explosion. Roy dived straight down, as fast as lightning, and stabbed straight to Netero's face. That speed cannot be captured by the naked eye at all. Candidates headed by Hanzo, Babu, Qingli, Burns, and Greta can only see a black thunderbolt, which flashes away, and the next moment has already arrived ground, and stabbed Netero in the chest. What an exaggerated speed. Why can't I see anything? Concentrate and hold your breath. Facing this speed, substituting in, all the candidates are desperate. If it was them who were stabbed, within 0.1 seconds, they would all be pilled. But don't say it's them. Buhara Sachi touched his chest in unison, falling into self-doubt. Can't help but think, if they were stabbed by this knife, would they be able to stop it? No one told them the answer, but a familiar perverted laughter gave them a reference. Oh ho ho ho, this knife, even if you die, it will be a kind of enjoyment. Ah, you are indeed my Tianwei. You are not only attractive, but also thorny. Hisoka grabs Ilmi's arm with a stern neck. Help me, I can't take it anymore. I can see it. You are always incontinent lately. Ilmi gave Hisoka a big pussy with a deadpan face. I didn't use my nails, it was because of love. Otherwise, I'll kill him 10 times just because of his change of heart. Licking the dog. Ill fans will feel uncomfortable. But I didn't expect you to be strong enough to fight Netero. He is listed as S in the family archives, not under Ka Jin's twice-cooked Meat King. Ill fans just feel panicked. Seeing Roy vaguely able to make 2 moves with Netero is more uncomfortable than being defeated by Roy. Couldn't help but snap, and gave Hisoka again slap. Hisoka. I think a push pocket is just right. Ill fan. No. 1 is not enough, 2 are just right. Look, can't you speak normally? What the hell you said makes sense. Hisoka's mouth twitched cryptically. I'll kill you in a second. Crack. Suddenly there was an accent, and it burst open, forcing Hisoka and Yi or me to look at each other with frowned eyes. Roy's forward stabbing from the sky was too late, and at the moment when it was about to pierce Netero's chest, Netero clasped his hands. Crack. Caught in the palm of my hand. The name, Guanyin, is not called for nothing. Hey, I almost let you get away with it. Netero kicked Nianlong over, and firmly clamped Roy's stick knife. The straight stick knife, with a slightly curled tip, trembled violently at this time. Seems to be out of Roy's control. Hee, didn't you succeed? Roy suddenly opened his pale and blind eyes, and said softly, Aaron, come back. Roar. Nianlong, who had just eaten Roy's foot, opened its eyes as pale as Roy, glared at Netero, flicked its tail, and got into Roy's body. The Nian Chi returned to its place, and with its blessing, Roy's breath instantly increased again. With a flip of his wrist, he held the stick knife with his backhand, and slammed upwards violently. The knife that cut off the storm in front of Fujitora once again came to the world. Gravity knife rising dragon. Hula, the knife is so powerful, facing Roy's sharp knife. Even if Guanyin came, I didn't dare to hold Roy's Wenyi knife with the palm of my hand. Not to mention Netero. Hey, he's so strong, I can't say that the old man has to be more serious. Serious? Boy, you have to be serious, the president's office. There are some snow spots on the TV hanging on Chang. That's a phenomenon that can only be produced when the camera can't capture part of the picture. Maha half lied on the sofa, and signaled the bean-faced man not only to beat his legs, but also to squeeze his shoulders. But his eyes were locked on the TV, watching Roy carrying a real dragon, and slashing towards Netero. His eyelids. The child followed suit, and couldn't help feeling a little sad. The sword is so sharp. Looking at Maha's life, he has never seen a few famous swordsmen who can cut such a sharp sword at this age. You know, the moonstick-ear sword is a lifelong spear. Although the sword is not as difficult to practice as the spear, but it is not a routine if you want to practice it well. It is possible to achieve certain achievements, let alone reach the state of Roy in front of him. In other words, Ginger is still old and hot. Roy's swordsmanship inheritance and Fujitora stepped on the shoulders of giants, and they created this trick of ascending dragon. Therefore, if wants to block the knife without using Nen, then Roy doesn't mind changing a word. Shanglong becomes ascension to heaven. Hila. The stick knife pierced the sky, pulling out a slender silver thread, carrying 100 times the gravity, with unparalleled momentum, the newcomer. The smile disappeared. Netero's complexion changed for the first time, his eyes full of age marks, looked at Roy without sadness or joy, stretched out a palm, and slowly put it on his chest. Roy's heart tightened. He obviously felt that the opponent's movements were very slow, but somehow he felt that he had maintained this movement for a long time. As far back as 90 years ago. The day when he achieved great martial arts. Day. That is, the day when Netero's master was defeated and turned to become a teacher. According to his master, the Guanyin he saw from that palm is now officially displayed in front of Roy. Dang. There seems to be a ringing of Hongzong Dalu. A golden light wheel slowly emerges from behind Netero. It is a majestic Guanyin statue. She has 100 arms, 100 palms. Each palm is holding a lotus flower print. The moment he appeared suddenly, a soft light radiated to the surrounding. Avalokitesvara became a monk, dedicated to Buddha. Transform disasters and disasters, save all living beings. All the examinees were illuminated by the golden light. No matter whether they were happy, worried, surprised or naive at the moment, they were all relieved. Even looking at the vicious person, the lines of the face are softer. Except for some pervert. Oh ho ho ho, Sparasi, it's amazing. I seem to see something amazing. Attack and defense, no flaws, it's just. Couldn't be better. Hisoka yelled, stretched his neck and opened his arms, stuck out his nails, and grabbed his thigh fiercely. The nails that are as sharp as knives sink into the flesh, bringing out a puddle of blood. Painful and sober and happy. Insufficient concentration is like this. Won't you consider marrying Netero altogether? Ilmi glanced at Hisoka, sacrificed a pilgrimage nail with a blank face, and hit her own thigh, using the pain to get rid of Netero's control. That's right, it's control. Sachi pinched Buhara, and Buhara gave Sachi a big punch in turn. The two shook their heads, stretched out their hands to cover their eyes, and avoided being irradiated by the golden light. I just breathed a sigh of relief. I didn't expect Roy Zoldyck to force the president to use Nen. Is it true that the Zoldyck family is so perverted? Buhara was shocked to see Roy's pair of blind eyes spinning around. Not only was he not disturbed by the golden light, but he became even more excited. Retreat. No. It's just that Roy Zoldyck is so perverted by himself. Sachi struggled to separate a glimmer of vision and glanced at Kahlua and Gitaracker at the side. As Roy's brothers, the surprised expressions on their faces were similar to theirs. It's the same, it's just better to hide it. This also shows from the side. Roy Zoldyck, the second young master of the Zoldyck family, is hiding deep enough, or in other words, his rank is too high, and it is simply not within the reach of other juniors of the Zoldyck family. This is really quite scary. Hee, Avalokitesvara of 100 forms. Old man. Do you know that there is also 1,000 armed Avalokitesvara in this world? Dang lang. A knife slashed at Netero's body. Roy smiled, not surprised at all, and was blocked by a Guanyin palm protruding out in time. Boom. The dark purple gravity line and the golden light of the Bodhisattva collided violently together. A monstrous wave of weather was formed, centered on Roy and Netero, and swept out towards the surroundings. Kacha. The mountain forest shivered and shrank back, not daring to move, but the trees suffered, being uprooted by the airwaves and swept up into the sky. Damn it. Is this still a human? Exclamations and screams exploded. Gon yelled, wow, and widened his innocent eyes, looking at the two people who were stalemate in the field. The pupils with clear black and clear eyes were shining with admiration. Hey, is it real or not? Beside him, Leorio pushed the sunglasses on the bridge of his nose, feeling that he was not watching a sparring match, but watching a movie with special effects, so exaggerated that people couldn't tell clear the truth. The first time. At this time, Kurapika said in a deep voice. This is the first time I have seen someone who can stand up to Mr. Tiano. It can only be said. As expected of being the strongest human being, well-deserved reputation. Cough cough. Shouldn't the point be my brother? A certain white-haired stinky brother puffed out his chest and said proudly, even my brother can deal with it. Human beings are the strongest, but that's all. But. Don't you hate Uncle? Gon looked suspiciously at Kahlua. At your proud face, it doesn't look like you hate it. No way, Race. This nasty brat. Is he trying to get along with me? Kahlua gritted his teeth, and glared at Gon. The clinker, a stronger airwave hit, directly blowing him and Gon away. Ho 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 ho. Avalokitesvara. Netero looked at Roy's blind eyes, and said with a smile, boy, do you think I can't deal with you with 100 arms? I didn't say that. Okay, don't you know if you try it? One knife is not enough. Then another knife. Roy is very clear. Facing the first person in the world, the momentum must not be broken. If you don't stop, you will be seized. And being seized, for Netero who has been immersed in martial arts for more than 100 years, it means defeat. So, after a stalemate for a while, Roy resolutely distanced himself from Netero, turned his staff and saber, and slashed forward again. Then, one knife, 2 swords, 3 swords, chop, chop, pick, stab, tease. Putting aside all superfluous thoughts, Roy demonstrated Fujitora's swordsmanship to the fullest. The prompt sound on the panel also jumped out under his attack of one knife after another. Reminder. Experience value +1. +1. +1. Ding ding dang dang. The sound of Jin Ge clashing echoed, and the escaping sparks flew away. As Hisoka said, 100 styles of Avalokitesvara integrates offense and defense, without any flaws. Every time when Roy's blade is about to touch Netero's body, he arrives just right. Li Mang stopped her. This kid, he has learned a good sword skill. Even so, Netero maintained his true form as a bodhisattva, but it was not easy. He could clearly feel the impact of Roy, and couldn't help being curious about the boy's sword skills. Where did you learn it from, at least? Based on his friendship with the Zoldykes for so many years, he has never heard of anyone in the Zoldykes who can play with a knife. I don't mention it for the younger generation. Silva plays ball, Geno plays dragon, Maha, a bad old man, has the same virtues as him. They are both enhancers, and they also follow the way of martial arts, and I have never seen him use a knife with anyone. So who did you learn this knife from? After all, looking at the whole world, there are not many famous swordsmen. It's a blessing not to see things, my teacher Fujitora. Roy smiled. The knife in his hand became faster, and collided with Netero like a storm. Fujitora. It's a character. Netero chewed on the name, and glanced at the clock hanging on the door of the abandoned warehouse out of the corner of his eye. Behind the monitor, in the president's office, Maha swept away this gaze with his hands, and snorted coldly. What are you looking at me for? Old man, I don't even know who Fujitora is. Maha is a man who can read lips. I also wonder when this kid Roy will show up as a master again? No. No. Fujitora is definitely made up by this brat. He grew up under my nose. If there is a master, he will definitely not be able to hide it from me. Unless. Maha squinted his eyes. His master named Fujitora is already strong enough to hide from my perception. But this is too bizarre and absurd. The little old man passed this ridiculous idea in a second, and his eyes were fixed on Roy. He still felt that it was more likely that the brat made it up. However, Roy at this time didn't know that the two old men had already made eye contact across a clock. He tried his best to dance the stick and knife, and only. Dry head chop. Chop hard. Chop with all your might. Only when you reach the pinnacle, can you break through yourself and reach the pinnacle. This kid. Netero felt the impact became more fierce and fierce. He manipulated the 100-style Avalokitesvara to deal with Roy's continuous slashing. For a moment, it was as if he saw the one who was in the ice and snow back then, facing the cold winter of 1949, practicing boxing myself. From the beginning, I could only throw 1,000 punches a day, to 2,000, 3,000, and then finally completed Juan Bensuzhen's 10,000 punches before the sun went down. It doesn't take half an hour to punch 10,000 punches. Obviously, the kid in front of him is already walking on the road he once walked, and he is not far away from condensing his sword intent. Puff. The aftermath of the collision between the old and the young followed one after another, and it seemed to be approaching an intensified trend. This directly led to. All the candidates couldn't even see it. The speed of the two is too fast. They may have confronted hundreds of times in an instant. In the eyes of Gon, Kurapika, Leorio, Hanzo, Babu, Qingli, Burns, Greta and others, there are only two colors left in the world. One gold and one purple are still in the process of crazily colliding and intertwining. Back further. Sa-Si leapt forward and caught Gon and Kahlua, who were blown away by the blast, secretly cursing the two brats for being so bold, counting them as the closest. Gon and Kahlua looked at each other embarrassingly, and at the same time gave a cold snort, and turned their heads away. It's not because of you. The two of them complained in their hearts. Then they touched their chests together, with lingering fear, a little scared. It's terrible. I don't know if Dad can handle this level of fighting. The two seem to have a rare connection, but they thought of Jin and Silva at the same time. They can only say, it is indeed a natural friendship, stronger than gold. And at this time, a star food hunter who ran to the side and retched came back. Seeing her, Buhara sighed and said, Hey, Menchi, what Sachi said is right. If he chooses to let the water go, maybe it won't make such a big fuss. Do you need to tell me? Who knew that Roy Zoldyck would be so strong? Menchi gave Bara a blank look, and there seemed to be mud in her mouth that hadn't been cleaned up, so she didn't have the slightest desire to speak. The girl's complexion was very ugly, so she didn't say anything at all, and looked at Netero and Roy who were fighting in the field without saying a word. She rubbed her fists and let them go. And then let go. The emotions in my heart are like growing grass, which is still chaotic after constant cutting. complicated and unspeakable. Boom. Finally, after fighting countless times, Netero slapped Roy flying with his palm, and said with a sigh, "Boy, the same sentence. Insufficient strength. Even if I stand up and let you fight, you can't break through my defense, so how about letting it go? 10 billion later, the old man will ask Xiaoduzi to call you." Luo Firen was in midair, using his stick knife to break through the air, cleverly relieved the momentum, stabilized his figure, looked down at Netero, and shook his head. "It's too late, you said this 5 minutes ago. I might agree, but now I want more than just money." Roy glanced at the panel calmly. Reminder. The current cumulative experience value, 8 points. So it's 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock, which means it's only one step away from unlocking the template further. If he gets stuck at this step, Roy himself will not forgive himself. But I ordered them all and gave the money, so what do you mean by playing? Netero. A group of examinees and 3 examiners, Sachi, Barrett, and Menchi, N. all turned into peas' eyes. A certain pervert was also stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. "Oh ho ho ho, it's getting more and more interesting, isn't it?" The corners of Hisoka's mouth were pulled up obliquely, forming a deep versus shape, and his eyes were bent into crescents, looking at Roy eagerly. As expected of his teacher Tianwei, he is becoming more and more attractive. This heart that is keen on fighting, it's really a matter of others. Shua. The playing cards were directly pulled into an accordion shape by Hisoka. Wouldn't it be a pity if we didn't come to the next song in such a wonderful battle? It's a pity. Some people don't buy it. After being shot by the unkind eyes of Menchi, Buhara, and Sachi, Hisoka calmed down a little, and closed the playing cards again with a swish. "It's not as good as Maha. No one is a bird except Netero, and even a certain old man got angry and didn't even give Netero face," pointing at Netero on the TV and scolding. "Boy, you can play tricks. Don't just talk and don't practice, just give me your qualities first." "I don't believe it, my grandson can still hit you, you bastard." Maha spit out a mouthful of saliva, and slapped the bean-faced man with his backhand. "Be gentle. You hurt me." "Why, seeing me scolding your boss, you were angry, you want to murder. Have you stopped joking?" The Do-Mian man's body went limp, and he passed out on the ground. "Oh my god, in front of you, the originator of killers, if you commit murder, I'll just die, as a respect." With a sound of plop, the bean-faced man turned his face to the ground, and there was no sound. Maha curled his lips. "You eggless coward, just like your boss." Unbeknownst to him, the corner of Netero's mouth twitched, and he also scolded Maha in his heart. "The upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked. Maha, your grandson is sticky, is he no different from you, old bastard?" The old man took the initiative to hand over a step, but he didn't give him any face. Tisk. "It seems that your Zoldyck family's tutor is really worrying." Smacking his mouth, Netero quickly adjusted his emotions. It's not a joke that human beings are the strongest, and the kung fu of adjusting emotions is also the best in the world. Netero looked at Roy with a smile, and said lightly, "Boy, it seems that you don't agree with God's statement. Or do you think you are sure to break through my defense?" Roy took a deep breath. "Old man, I still give you that sentence. How will you know if you don't try?" "Oh. Ho 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 ho." Netero's smile suddenly disappeared. He squinted at Roy and said, "Then show your housekeeping skills and let the horse come here." Young people don't talk about martial arts, so when he is an old man, he doesn't have to worry about his face. Keep his hand. If you want to hand out, then hand out. Let this old man replace Maha, that bad old man, and discipline you." Boom. The Bodhisattva burst into anger, and Vajra glared angrily. A soaring aura suddenly erupted from Netero's body, pressing fiercely towards Roy. Roy's face was blown so tightly against his cheeks that he trembled. But he was fearless, and he took off the wine gourd leisurely, raised his neck, drained the water from the gourd, and then wiped the corner of his mouth, and said presumptuously, "Ha ha ha. This is the best ATM machine of power. The time has come when I need your. Give me full power. Follow my orders." It seemed that I felt the owner's surging emotions. A cartoon version of the ATM machine jumped out happily, opened its mouth, and the number in the one-eyed one instantly changed from 1102 to 0. At the same time, 110 tons of power poured into Roy's body in an instant, coupled with the nearly 90 points of power temporarily provided by the paper-painted martial body. Roy's power at this moment directly surpassed the limit, reached the peak of breaking the limit, that is, amazingly equivalent to Netero 399 points, it is only one step away from the double limit breaking. And then, but listen. Gotcha, there was an explosion. The air was directly crushed by Roy's subconscious fist. Then, the force field exploded from Roy's heart, instantly crushing Netero's aura, pressing on him. And all of this was done in less than a breath, under Netero and everyone's shocked eyes. The blind boy stood tall in the sky, with his black hair flying upside down. Looking down at the pair of terrifying blind eyes, he casually brushed his hair back, and calmly said to Netero and all the candidates and examiners present, "Next, I want the whole world to remember. My name is Roy Zoldyck. Whoa-ree, he is so crazy." The aphasia was spreading. When Roy said this sentence, there was a rare case where no one raised any objection, as if it should be so. It should be so. For all the candidates and examiners. Aside from envy, there is only sourness, but there is no jealousy. It's really strange. A man was born between the heaven and the earth. How can he be depressed for a long time? You should sleep with the most beautiful girl, drink the strongest wine, ride the most powerful dragon, and be the most powerful person. I was wrong, Mr. Tiano. He's going to run to the Pirate King. Unspeakable astonishment. Whether they are fans of Roy or not, at this moment, everyone feels a fire in their chests, burning violently. Hisoka knelt down on the ground with a plop, and opened his arms to hug Roy, who was standing in the sky. He was so excited that he couldn't even laugh. Only he could hear the heavy groan coming from his mouth. Breathing. I'm going to F*K him. I'm going to F*K him. I'm going to F*K him. No one can stop me from eating him. Oh ho ho ho. Crazy. Stay away from this lunatic. Saucy frowned, protecting the candidates and quietly away from Hisoka. The perverted magician, who couldn't even control his killing intent. The Gitaracker incarnated by Ilmi has been guarding him forever. Your ugliness. It's really disgusting. A nail from Shu was pierced in Hisoka's thigh. Please wake me up. Ill fans. He waved his hands away, looked up at Roy standing in the sky, and then looked down at Hisoka. The so-called love is just a piece of shit. Far less fragrant than my brother. Thank you for caring, but please don't Q. Kahlua looked up at Roy. Is this the real strength of the second brother? Let the whole world remember his name. When will I have this day? The stinky brother kept his mouth shut, trying not to lose his composure, as if only in this way can he show that he is not a dick second brother. It's a pity that some people don't care about him. Gon yelled and jumped up and down. Wow, uncle, you are so handsome. Let the whole world remember your name. Isn't that as handsome as my dad? The innocent eyes of the little brat almost turned into light bulbs, and he danced excitedly. If it wasn't for Leorio and Kurapika holding him down from left to right, maybe this idiot would slip into battle and voluntarily lock up. Ho 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 ho. That brat is Jin's child. Netero glanced at Gon out of the corner of his eye, and noticed the iconic spiky hair, which was almost the same as Jin, who didn't like wearing hats when he was young. Fighting. But handsome is handsome. The little ghost aura nodes has not been opened, and it is still far from seeing the inside through the appearance. Netero withdrew his eyes and stared at Roy, folded his palms together, and quietly put on a defensive posture, but he was a little surprised in his heart. Those red spots overflowing from the young man's body were the blood energy that had been condensed to the extreme and reached the first level. Extreme peak performance. But the president of the assembly clearly remembered that it hasn't been long since this kid broke the limit of strength just now. Why did he improve again in an instant? Could it be restriction and oath? No. Not. In the president's office, Maha also noticed Roy's strangeness, and sat up from the sofa. The old man pinched his chin and stared at Roy, but he didn't notice a trace of Roy. Traces of constraint. You must know that restrictions and oaths will have obvious appearance characteristics. For example, Kurapika's chains are only aimed at the Phantom Brigade, and their power is greatly increased. The Uncle Gang, summoned by Gon, has a precursor to the accumulation of extreme emotions and then erupts. But Roy suddenly became stronger without warning. What a ghost. Kaka, feeling the surging power in my body like a vast ocean. Roy stretched his neck, turned his back to the sun, opened his arms, and opened his back like a ghost. He clenched the stick knife in his hand. Round 2 has started. Absolute defense that even the king of ants can't break through? Hey, it's really exciting. Bang. The word, shaved, came first. Roy's figure flashed, and suddenly, he disappeared in front of all the candidates. In the next 0.01 seconds, he suddenly appeared in front of Netero, and slashed again, without using any fancy skills. It seemed that even his movements were very slow. But the flashing staff and knife were reflected in Netero's body. In the pupil. But for the first time, ripples began to ripple in his calm heart lake. As the saying goes, extreme stillness is extreme movement. It's not that this kid's knife is slow. It's that my speed is slower than this kid's knife speed. When the alarm bell sounded, Netero clapped his hands together, and 100 styles of Avalokitesvara, uncommonly raised 2 arms, stretched out 2 palms, and clenched them into fists. A sky cannon hit Roy. The arm of Baishi Avalokitesvara is much longer than Roy's stick knife, and 1 inch is longer and 1 inch stronger. Netero is indeed a top powerhouse with extremely rich actual combat experience. Advantage, stop Robin. The sharp sound that pierced the eardrum exploded. All the examinees covered their ears in pain, and what's more, squatted down with their heads in their hands. For a while, they didn't hear a soft poohee, and there was a faint sound from the center of the collision. Come on. Huh. Netero moved his ears, sensing something was wrong, and took another look. He did successfully stop Roy, but the amazing force transmitted from Roy's blade pierced his palm. Strictly in a sense, it pierced the palm of Baishi Guanyin and broke through his defense. Tisk. The shield is broken. In the president's office, Maha put his arms behind his head and squinted his eyes to watch the TV. If he dared to say the second, no one in the world would dare to say the first. The little old man saw it clearly. At the moment when the Netero's cannon hammer hit Roy, the young man's body twisted strangely, avoided it abruptly, straightened his knife, and plunged into the Baishi Guanyin Luo in the palm of the empty space. If you are careless, you will lose. Anywhere, at any time, you can't underestimate any opponent. Especially. That person is my grandson. There was a smile on the corner of Maha's mouth, especially when he saw that Netero was stunned for a moment because of the 100 styles of Avalokitesvara. The corner of his mouth grinned, and he smiled even more happily. Almost didn't die. The Doomian man who was not long ago is alive. Damn. Why is this old man so happy? Could it be that he was hit by the president? No. No. That's the president. The bean-faced man really wanted to stand up and take a look, but he pinched himself abruptly. This bad old man was arrested and used as a massage man. Yeah. Yale Menchi, hit me. I may be a little hypoglycemic. I must be dizzy, right? I noticed that Roy's stick knife pierced through the body of Baishi Guanyin in the palm of his hand. The third arm protruded by Netero grabbed him and couldn't get an inch. Buhara couldn't believe his eyes, and was directly hit by Menchi in the back. Hiss. F***K. Buhara gasped in pain, and glared at Menchi. It's too despicable to use a kidney shot. You are trying to destroy my roots, go. Are you sisters? Hey. Menchi rolled her eyes at Buhara, looked coldly at the knife that Roy pierced through the 100 styles of Avalokitesvara, and touched her heart. Feeling as if she had been stabbed, feeling unspeakably uncomfortable. The opponent's strength is far beyond her imagination. It seems that perfunctory her is not something that cannot be unacceptable. 2. But his opponent is the president. He is just a candidate for the exam, but he can break the defense of the president. How can I be convinced? Menchi kicked Buhara again angrily. The fat man looked at her aggrieved. Seeing that Sa Si shook his head. It's not right. I'm upset. Sa Si glanced at the awkward Menchi and Buhara, and compared the eyes of the candidates who were staring at each other. Roy's knife is destined to become a memory that everyone will never forget. Lost memory. Sigh. It's too outrageous to be able to do such a thing in the year of the weak crown. Indeed. The old man approves of you, Roy Zoldyck. In the center of the intertwined golden light and dark purple gravity lines, Netero quickly calmed down after the initial astonishment, and looked deeply at the boy in front of him. The blind man's blind eyes are pale, and his gaze is shocking, but there are so many hidden cards. It seems like you can't see the end at a glance. Just like the move that avoided his punch just now. If the old man's guess is correct, it should be another physical technique created by you. You see clearly. With a light pull of his elbow, Roy pulled the stick knife out of Baishi Guanyin's hand smoothly, and said with a faint smile, "It's called Jawa, and you can't use it alone. It's just a trick on the countertop." Can't get on the table? Netero laughed. It almost made me mad, but it's not that I can't get on the table. Of course, the more important thing is, boy, can you tell me why your strength suddenly increased? No, the whole card is said. Can it still be called the whole card? Roy looked at Netero with a half smile and said, "Unless you tell me the cultivation method of Baishi Avalokitesvara. Forget it." Netero simply waved his hand, put away the 100 forms of Avalokitesvara, and said quietly, "Old man, the 100 forms of Avalokitesvara is really not on the stage, and it is far less powerful than the 1,000-handed Avalokitesvara. Hey, 1,000 arms. Isn't that a centipede? Old things are narrow-minded, right?" Roy shook his head and laughed, and put the knife into the sheath with a clang. Both of them had a tacit understanding and stopped their hands at the same time. One watched some old man's grandson. One got 10 billion in cash plus 10 experience points. Reminder. The cumulative experience value of the current host, 10 points. Do you want to further unlock the Fujitora smile template? The familiar prompt echoed in my mind, as if I was about to see the teacher again. Sure enough. Following Roy's yes, ripples rippled through the void, and a simple stick knife pierced through the ripples. Then came a pair of clogs. Then a dashing cloak of justice. And finally the pair of iconic blind eyes. Fujitora closed his eyes tightly, walked out, saw Roy and smiled angrily. The old man said, "What's going on?" He was talking about ramen. "I never thought of being pulled by you again." "Why, you were ready to surpass me this time. Are you going to practice with me?" "No. Tired. Destroyed." Roy pouted to the side with a wry smile. "Huh." Fujitora raised his eyes and looked around. The trees are gone. The stones are broken. There are potholes everywhere. The ground was washed by Netero and Roy one after another. The warehouse door the mountain forest before has been completely destroyed. It's like a dog has been bitten. Obviously, a thrilling battle has just been experienced here. Well. Last time I encountered a storm. This time I was with someone. Fujitora shook his head slightly and sighed. It seems that I, a student, have never been a law-abiding master. Tell me, who did you fight with? Fujitora held a stick and knife in his hand, and he was not angry. The student was beaten. As a teacher, he couldn't pretend that nothing happened. It's a pity that your old age is just a will projection, so don't pretend to be big here. Roy gave Fujitora a blank look, pointed at Netero who was walking towards Menchi with his back facing him. "Teacher, it's him. Help me F***K him." Fujitora. He smiled. I really glanced at Netero, secretly startled. The old man, Shirin, with his hands behind his back, looked weak, but in reality he was restrained, and he looked very much like the person he had always respected. Heroes of naval legends, Monkey D. Garp.